I ain't gonna lie. I was trying to see how long I can hold that face while you come into the cut. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hey, right now, I feel like one of those guys where like I want to sell you something. I don't know what it is exactly though. I don't know. I feel like I want to sell you some ideas, or I'm like one of those guys that wants to sell you like those real estate books. You know what I mean? Like, let me show you how you can flip houses, how I can change your life. Okay, I can change your life. Are you tired of living paycheck to paycheck? Read my book, How to Flip Houses. I'm doing something hot in the streets in Chicago. And the first 50 callers that calls right now is going to get a free spot. That's how I feel like now. I ain't gonna lie, I made a little adjustment with the legs. I'm very comfortable right now. And you're listening to the Mack and Black podcast. I know it's been 2 weeks since I've been on to the show physically, okay? I called in last week. I was at work. I thought I was in the clear. Of course, we got busy. And then I came back, and then it just went smooth from there. So luckily for me, I got to open the restaurant today. Got here in enough time so we can start the show. Mack is going to call in. I'm having him call in here in a little bit. And then we'll talk from there on out. I mean, we got some things to talk about. We got the NFC. By the way, this is the Mack and Black podcast. I am the black portion of the show. And then, like a complete idiot, I forgot to vibrate my phone. So there we go. And then, like a further moron, I forgot to look at myself while I am watching the show. It's very important that I actually look at myself while I'm watching the show. So, hold on a second. I get it worked out. Anyway, as you can see, I'm in my Buccaneers gear. I look very professional. The hat matches the shirt. That's the way it's supposed to go. I'm in between playing with the pen and then playing with I'm always playing with the stress ball of the Nux brain. Okay? Like, it got me through the show the last time we did it. So I'm just glad it's still here. Today's podcast is brought to you in part by Intrinsic Marketing, the aforementioned Nux 3-in-1 refresher spray, Pod River podcast, and then also you can check us out on mackandblack.com, and then you can check us out on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and any other place for podcasts. So, hey man, we got some things. We got to get into football. The official preseason is here. I was not desperate enough to watch the Hall of Fame game. I did check out some of the Buccaneers-Steelers game. I've been kind of going piece by piece from each game, more or less really just wanting to look at a lot of the first teamers and see how everyone's doing on their first drive, because the first preseason game is kind of for everyone to get their feet wet. You know, your starters are going to get their feet wet. They're going to get 1 or 2 drives if you're lucky. And then the second stringers and then your third stringers, pretty much finish out the rest of the game. Then in week 2, the first team stringers will get maybe anywhere from 2 to maybe even 3. They would get 3 series, and then your second stringers, and then the third stringers again. But it's that third preseason game, which is known as the dress rehearsal. So that's when your first stringers are going to get maybe 2 quarters if they're lucky. And then, the fourth preseason game is pretty much for anyone that's trying to make the team. So we're done with week 1. Some things that I saw from a lot of teams I was very impressed with. By the way, I don't mean to keep looking at myself in this monitor, but I just got my hair cut yesterday. I went with the full bald, but I don't want to show it. Not because I'm embarrassed of being bald. I made that decision. The big man is getting old and my hair's falling out, whatever, it's genetics. But man, this goatee with the hat and the professional polo that I got working here, looking crispy on this screen. Shoot. If a girl called in right now and was like, "Hey, yo, Nick, I wanna get your phone number," Steve, you have to take the number. Do not take the phone number, and then I'll just screen it from there. Once I'm done and I get off, talk through her, see she, come with the old school game. But the brother is looking extra crispy right now. I can't sit here and lie. But first things first, we're gonna call Mack here in the next 15, 20 minutes. We'll get him, make sure that he's settled with his brother got married, if I'm not mistaken. So he's taking care at the wedding. He did say things are starting to wind down. So I'll hit him up here in a little bit because I know he wants to talk at least a little NFC East. We're in week 5, 6, 7, 8, week 5 of our training camp segment. We got rid of I shouldn't say got rid of. Got rid of is too strong. That's too strong. We didn't get rid of anything. We just got through the NFC East, the AFC. We got through the AFC. I do a little podcast called the Arch Rivals Football, and it's the first time that I've done this. And last week? Oh no, the thing about the show is is that everybody but me are AFC East. I mean, they're all AFC fans. One's a Raiders fan, one's a Chiefs fan, Ricky's a Patriots fan, Todd's a Chiefs fan, and then Alex is a Raiders fan. So I'm the only guy that's talking about the premier conference of football, and that's the NFC. This isn't up for debate. This isn't even up for debate, okay? The NFC is premier. Now I know, oh my God, Tom Brady, 6 rings, mama man, yeah, I get all that. But AFC football to me is so boring, though. I don't know why. It's just boring to me. It's like watching the National League. The National League to me is so boring. And I love how like people come at me and they're like, hold on, my fault. I made people come in, they're like, what do they try to say? They try to say, well, the National League is more of the not the Premier League, but it's more of the old school league because you have to make double switches and like managerial moves. And I'm thinking to myself, who goes to a baseball game and says, you know what? I didn't notice that Joe Madden didn't make any double switches today. I'm very disappointed. Nobody goes to the game to focus on managerial moves. Here's the one argument that that's always been debated is about the DH rule. Whether if the entire Major League Baseball needs to get the DH rule. And I'm all for it. As an American League component, this should have been done years ago. We should have had an all DH in the major leagues because I've seen AL pitchers go down because of running the bases. If you're a pitcher, your main job is to pitch the baseball. You shouldn't be hitting the baseball. You shouldn't be in the batter's box. There's no reason. And I just think it's a joke that the National League still has pitchers hitting. It's stupid. One international rule. Everybody gets the everyone gets the DH. Just makes baseball that much better, in my opinion. And speaking of baseball, I got to give credit where credit's due. I'm a diehard Yankees fan, and we lost back-to-back games to Toronto. Today is kind of a heartbreaker. We were playing well. Came back and took the lead, but in typical Yankees fashion, our bullpen be letting it down. The bullpen has been good at times, but man, when the bullpen is bad, it's bad. But I got to give credit where credit is due. The New York Mets are hot. These guys are red hot. And my thing was with the Mets is I've always talked about how I felt like the Mets and Yankees could benefit from one another if the Mets would get off their high horse and not want to trade to New York. But here's a Mets team that came in, they snuck in, they got Marcus Stroman for two AAA pitchers that no one's probably not going to hear. That's too strong, but a lot of people don't even know who these guys are that they traded for them. You know what I'm saying? So you got those guys, and then and then they decide not to trade Noah Syndergaard. And so, Pete Alonso, who's on the verge of potentially breaking Aaron Judge's home run rookie record, which is at 50 or 51. I think it's at 50 right now. He's gotten better since the All-Star break, because coming out of the All-Star break, he came out kind of slow, and everyone was thinking, it could be they're thinking that this could be the home run derby after effect, because even Aaron Judge went through the home run derby after effect after a little bit. And so, but he's got hot. Cano went down. They brought in Joe Panic. But I think, the Mets are getting key hits from guys you wouldn't expect of. Like the other night, Todd Frazier, who played for the Yankees and now is with the New York Mets, hit a huge 3-run home run that led to a walk-off win. And the thing about the Mets, in my opinion, is that they have blown a lot of saves this year. Edwin Diaz, we're talking about a guy who had 57 saves for the Seattle Mariners last year. And in order to kind of get Diaz, they had to take on Cano, and the Mets went ahead and took on Cano. And Edwin Diaz has not been the same pitcher that he was last year, maybe in the first half. But, the man's getting the job done. The Mets are getting the job done. They're a half game out. As before this show, I know that they were a half game out of that last wild card spot. But I'm going to tell you what, man, I feel like this is not even so much good for baseball. I think it's just good for New York, because you already got the Yankees that have a comfortable lead in the East. Here come the red hot Mets that are trying to take the wild card spot. And if they stay at this pace, they could catch the Braves maybe. But I can't deny on how hot and how good the Mets have been. They've been really good. And maybe Brody doesn't look so much like a fool, because the reports were that after the Mets acquired Stroman, that they were going to flip Stroman to the Yankees in exchange for I think it was Clint Frazier and Deivi Garcia, and the Yankees told them no. But if you look at this starting rotation that they got, you're talking DeGrom, Syndergaard, Matz, Stroman, and Zach Wheeler just for this year. That's a nice little starting five. And if the Mets bullpen can keep them in games and close out games, I look out. Like, no offense to the Philadelphia Phillies, but I've never been high on that team. I've never been high on the Phillies, and I definitely am not really high on the fact that they gave so much money for Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper, in my opinion, he's a great home run hitter, but I don't feel as if, like, average-wise, he's not good. I think I don't think his average is good this year. I think it's okay, but it's not good. But if Bryce Harper, I feel Bryce Harper is more of a cancer to a locker room than he is any kind of help. I think that's why the Nationals didn't want to pay him that money. I really do. I think that's why the Nationals didn't want to pay him that bread. Because you got a young phenom in Juan Soto that's coming out. And here's a funny thing. Like, if the New York Mets overtake the Washington Nationals, and let's say they do get that, my man Mario says, let's go Mets. Hey, man, like I said, I'm not first off, let me tell you like this. I know I'm in a lot of these Yankees versus Mets groups, and I'm in a lot of these groups where it's Yankees versus Mets, and Mets fans always make fun of the Yankees when they lose and vice versa and everything. I don't have any concern when it comes to the New York Mets. I'm more concerned about Boston and Tampa, okay? If the Mets are doing great, hey, man, more power to them. And the Mets right now are playing great. They are playing great baseball. They're getting timely hits. See, here's the thing. Maybe the Cano injury, if you think about it, is kind of a blessing in disguise in this case. It's nothing more than what I've seen on the other side of the New York team. You know, the year that the Yankees finally got rid of all these big contracts, you let the kids come up and they finally develop and they play well. They made it all the way to Game 7 of the ALCS. The New York Mets are doing the same thing. Alonso's playing great. Jeff McNeil's playing really good. Who else is there's another person that's playing great? Oh, Conforto's getting big hits. You know, Todd Frazier is the veteran of that squad, and he's been getting some big hits. You know, my buddy Brian Murphy, that's a diehard Mets fan, and I know he catches hell because he roots for the Mets and the Red Sox, and he kind of gave up on the Mets, and it's a long, stupid-ass story. But the one thing when I went to New York last year, I met him and I hung out with him, and he said the one thing that drives him nuts about the New York Mets is the simple fact that when the Yankees have their young kids up and all the hype that comes with these young kids, they perform. You don't get that from the Mets, but that's changed this year. See, I can't sit here and blame Mickey Callaway for a lot of the Mets' misery because, yeah, they've blown a lot of saves, but what is Mickey Callaway supposed to do? If Edwin Diaz is your closer, you have to bring out your closer. Your closer's got to perform. You know what I'm saying? Your performer, I mean, your closer's got to get on the performance. I'm hitting up Mack right now. I'm going to tell him calling like 7:30. Yeah, like about 7:30. Yeah, after Knox. All right, after Knox. Steve's got it. All right. As you can see, I cannot do two things at once. Facts. But tell him, you know what? Hey, tell him to call him right now. Go ahead, text him and tell him to call him right now. If he's available, tell him to call him right now. We'll get Mack in here right now. But I'm just saying, man. I know a lot of people don't think that that the Yankees could beat Houston, not after they went on the goddamn Greinke. But I will say this. I will say that I'm down for a Subway Series if it's going to happen. I really am. If the Yankees can somehow get past Houston and the Mets can ride this train to the World Series, I mean, it would be great. People are going to say, oh, well, a lot of people aren't going to watch the matchup because, it's New York, nobody cares, blah, 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 this and that, and all this other nonsense. But, I mean, I think it'd be great. I think it would be great, personally. I mean, because the Mets have nothing but revenge on their minds when they lost in the 2000 World Series. But I'm telling you what, man, this team right here, this Mets team, it's starting to gel at the right time. The Mets are kind of that horse that came out slow, but it's a closer. That's how the Mets are playing right now. They're playing the role as the closer. And they're red hot. Let's see where it goes. That's what I say. Let's see where it goes. Shoot. And don't get me wrong, I know the Braves are going to have something to say about it. The National League Central race is kind of, thick, with the Cubs and the Brewers and the Cardinals kind of battling it out a little bit. The National League West, the Los Angeles Dodgers then ran away and hid with that. See, this is why you put that second wild card into the mix because it makes the season that much more interesting. See, when you only had one wild card, if that wild card team was 10 or 15 games better than the fifth best team, then at that point, the baseball season is moot. Like, why would you watch any more of it unless there's an ultimate collapse that's going to happen? So that's something to think about. That's something to think about. But man, I'm telling you, man. I mean, the Mets are hot. They're red hot. I feel like I'm finna coach an offensive line with this shirt on. That is usually the sound that we finna get Mack on the line. I just told him to call it now.
Hey.
What up?
Yo, what's good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Hey, you're breaking up on me.
Okay, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Am I no more breakup?
No, it's perfect now.
All right, man. What's going on?
What's good, brother?
Man, I can't call it just breaking into a little baseball right now, talking about the Mets thing kind of got a little hot, been making things a little interesting,
Hey, yeah. So there's still a little feedback, but my bad. But yeah, hey man, I appreciate you holding it down in the studio while I'm out, man. I got my brother's wedding event going on today, so only one more event until we're done. Apparently, Eric, we got to be extra about it. We can't just have one wedding day. You got to have like 4 or 5 events. Just be extra.
Hey man, hey, it's what it is. I ain't tripping. Cause matter of fact, I'm holding it down this week, and then next week I'll be in New York. But at the same time, I might try to. We'll talk about it. But I might try to. I might Skype in on that one because.
That'd be dope.
Yeah, I might Skype in on that one. That one would be fun, like we did when I was at Six Flags. I'll be in a more secluded area so that I don't have like 9 million eyes looking at me while I'm over here trying to have a sports show conversation. I don't want people to be like,
sweet. Yeah, no, that's how it goes, man. We hold down for each other. So yeah, no, I got you next week, man. But yeah, dude, crazy stuff going on in baseball right now, man.
It really is right now, and I was mentioning earlier, with the Yankees have lost a couple of games, but the eyes have really been on the Mets. Like the Yankees kind of had their shine. They had their shine when they earlier in the year, when they kind of broke out. Like we're talking about, let's go back about a week or so ago. We sweep the Red Sox dead out of Yankee Stadium. We pretty much buried the Red Sox. But now the eyes have kind of shifted over to the Mets because it's like we kind of clown. Well, I know I clown, but maybe there were some people that are like, okay, this Marcus Stroman trade doesn't make sense. But the Mets are red hot. You're getting production out of your young guys, out of Alonso, out of McNeil, out of Conforto. I talked about how Todd Frazier's got some big hits. And all of a sudden, the Mets, before the show, now I haven't checked the standings yet, but before the show, they were a half game out of the wild card. They went from being what should have been potential sellers. They made one good move and getting Stroman. And now you're talking about a rotation that has DeGrom, Syndergaard, Matz, Stroman, and Wheeler. That's a nice little starting 5.
Yeah, man. And on top, you said it. Me and you, we both gave them some grief about the offseason, some grief about, the first half was not really nice for them, Nick. They did a lot of weird things. They, let go of their pitching coach, a guy that was close to DeGrom and Syndergaard, and they had a lot of weird drama going on with some of the new guys they had. Obviously the GM is new as well as the manager. And man, the last 3 weeks, I saw them when they played the White Sox, and the bats are coming alive. The bullpen is finally starting to do something. I mean, they've got a pretty nice bullpen there. Edwin Diaz, they brought him in to be a, bookend closer, and he had some struggles, and now he's coming around. Your Sam Lee Familia is in there. So they've got a nice starting 5 rotation now. And on top of that, the bats are coming alive. Conforto, Alonso, and then, we're talking about them adding like a Joe Panic, which was a nice move too.
Yeah.
So they're on their way.
Yeah, they're most definitely on their way, and like I said, dude, I don't know. I don't want to say that. I feel like as if when you're looking at the American League outside of the Central, we know that Houston and New York are kind of jockeying for position on who's going to be the best team in the American League. And then, you got Minnesota that's kind of battling with Cleveland for that central spot. And then there's, Tampa and Oakland. And I know that Texas. See, and this is why, of all the things that baseball's been trying to do, one of the things that I've never been against them doing was adding in that second wild card. Because as I mentioned before you came on to the show, when you only had one wild card, like if you would have looked at it last year, the Yankees would have played Boston right out the bat, and the whole season would have been over with, because you're going to get a team that's 10 or 12 games of, the fourth best team that's not a division leader. It's now 10 or 12 games better than the fifth place team. And now the season at this point is useless to watch. Nobody's going to care. Meanwhile, on Green Street, you bring in that second wild card, and now the sixth, seventh, and eighth best teams in their respective leagues could be 2 games apart from one another. So it brings in more excitement. You have to watch more games to see what's going on. I think this is the one thing that baseball has done that I think is great. Now, the next thing we need them to do is make a universal DH, and I think everything will be okay from there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Right now, I mean, it's a 2-horse race in the AL, Nick. I mean, the Yankees and the Astros right now seem to be the one to. Minnesota, we talked about it even when they were like killing it, and they were world beaters, and everybody was like, oh, this team's gonna run away with it. And next thing you know, Cleveland makes a couple of moves, they get another bat in the lineup, and next thing you know, boom, they're right where they want to be. And now they're fighting for first place. So yeah, I think it's a 2-horse race right now in the AL, and then you've got a pretty interesting thing going on in the NL right now with the Mets, and of course the whole East right now is really good.
Oh yeah, most def. The Braves last year showed. I mean, they got such a plethora of good young talent. The Dodgers speak for themselves and how good they've been this year. The National League Central, I think, is going to be the wild card. And I was sitting here wondering, I wonder how long the leash is on Joe Madden. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's say if the Cubs do miss the playoffs, does Joe Madden come back? Does a team like the White Sox keep an eye to see what happens on Joe Madden? I mean, it's nothing against, Rick Renteria or anything, but you're talking about a guy who took a hapless Tampa Bay team to Game 6 of the World Series. We're talking about a guy that took a Cubs team that was kind of on the cusp of things, changed the culture, and wins a World Series. If they let him go because they feel like the leash is now, it's time to let it go and it's time to bring in somebody else, do you, especially, if you're the White Sox, Kenny Williams is sitting there licking his chops, just hoping the Cubs screw up and do that. But I'm thinking like, how's the locker room going to really react, if you miss the playoffs? Does the respect from Joe Madden still be there, Well,
you know what? I'll tell you this right now, Nick, and, I'm sure you got a couple buddies that are Cubs fans. I certainly got more than a couple buddies that are Cubs fans. And, I think what happened after they won the World Series, Nick, is now, the Cubs set the bar, right? And now the fans are trying to maintain that sort of I guess that bar. And now, you saw the type of scrutiny he went under last year. I mean, when they got eliminated, it was basically like fire Madden. And it was kind of crazy because it was like, well, this guy took you guys to the World Series, and he's done really great things with this team. It's a make or break season for sure for them. And I wasn't surprised when they went out and got Castellanos from Detroit. I thought that was a tremendous trade for them, and even if that's a rental to me, Nick, that's still a good move. And at the end of the day right now, the Cubs right now are in a position where they can no longer just be in cruise control. Like, they have to be really in it every single game for the rest of the season. And, to me right now, it is a make or break year. I think it would be a huge, huge mistake to fire the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is clearly one of the best managers in the league. And, you mentioned it. I mean, Nick, you remember that team in Tampa Bay. That wasn't that great of a team. You know, he took them and he really did something special. And he's made a name for himself in the league. And for the Cubs to, go on a little bit of a dry streak here since 2016, and then give up on the guy. I listen, I'm not a guy who wants Rick Renteria gone, but if you're asking me who I would take between Renteria and Madden, I think I would be crazy to not take Madden.
Facts.
So, I think you'd have to evaluate it. And I think the Cubs right now, man, fans and organization alike, you got to be a little bit more understanding of what the climate of the league is right now, and understand that this guy's still one of the best managers in the league, and the team is still growing. They had to shift away from the way that they won the World Series in 2016, and now they've got a newer team. And I think it is make or break, but it's still crazy if they're going to fire this guy.
Right. Yeah, no, it's always interesting questions. I mean, think about it. I mean, Joe Girardi, took a team to Game 7 of the ALCS and he got fired. We're talking about. I mean, for every Joe Girardi, I feel like that I don't want to say for every Joe Girardi there's a Mike Scioscia, but I mean, Mike Scioscia was the manager for the Los Angeles Angels for how long, and that honeymoon from them winning the World Series back in like 2002, they hadn't come close to sniffing it since then, So I don't know. I think it's interesting because I think that the Cubs brass feel like that they have a product up there on the field that should win or compete for a World Series. But then again, if you go back to the two games they played at the end of the year when they lost to Milwaukee and then lost the wild card game to Colorado, all the Cubs were doing was hitting home run or trying to hit home runs. You scored 2 games and you scored 2 runs in 2 games at home. I almost thought that Joe Madden was finna get the boot then, because at what point do you say, hey man, can you guys go out there and swing for hits and let's stop trying bombing the freaking ball, over the fence? And yeah. I feel like they kind of got trapped in that. So I'm just figuring, the what have you done for me lately? Because, we see it in the NFL. Okay, it's like John Gruden. Okay, you took Tampa to the Super Bowl. That's great. We won the Super Bowl. The next year we mixed the playoffs. Okay, we're going to get you your guys, and then in 2 years you're out because the team still stinks. You know what I'm saying? So now I'm trying to figure out, what the mindset of the Chicago Cubs is if they feel like the Cubs are starting to digress. So you was on top, and then you made the playoffs. Now you had 2 games to try and make the playoffs, and you lost in both instances. Now what happens this year? Let's say if they don't make the playoffs. Let's say if Milwaukee catch heat. Let's say if the Cardinals catch heat, and somehow the Cubs don't catch heat, and they fall out. Are you pretty much done with Madden? You move on. Only time will tell. We'll see what happens. I'm just throwing out scenarios, but you never know.
Yeah. No, and Nick, I think the number one thing for me when it comes to the Cubs is, they rolled a huge dice with this pitching staff from the rotation all the way down to the bullpen. Obviously, they brought in Kimbrel late, which really helped out their case a little bit. But obviously now he's on the DL. He came in late into the season, and they didn't really get to get him in the groove of things. But then you're talking about a starting 5 right now with Lester and Hamels and Darvish and Quintana, and these are all guys that notoriously have struggles in stretches, and that's a huge problem for them. They needed some consistency out of that rotation, and right now they're not getting it. I mean, they've had Lester a couple of separate times over his last few starts give up games for them. Same thing when it comes to Hamels and Quintana. So they've got some issues that are personnel centric too. I mean, the whole bullpen thing with like Carl Edwards not really still not being able to figure it out. They tried a couple journeymen here or there and had to let them go. So I think right now, if the Cubs want to look at someone, they should be looking at Theo Epstein, because they tried this last ditch effort for Castellanos, which was great, and of course they brought in Kimbrel. But now you almost have to wonder, did the Cubs almost hamstring themselves by just assuming that everything was going to be all good with their rotation early in the season? Right,
exactly. Especially the never-ending hit or miss of what you're going to get from Yu Darvish. I personally believe, and it's not so much on the Cubs because they needed a pitcher and they paid for one, but I'm almost want to say that Yu Darvish would have thrived if he went to like a Seattle, or if he went to, give me another lower market team, Oakland, or if he went to, I'm trying to think of a lower end team, like not so much a play. Like Minnesota would be a great place where they love baseball, but the media hype isn't so much there. When you're coming to pitch for Chicago, you're in the third biggest market. You're going somewhere where you're in a win now situation. And he even admitted at one point that it was almost too much pressure on him. And I'm like, dude, your agent didn't tell you what you was walking into when you decided to sign a 5-year, $120 million deal with the Chicago Cubs? Like, have you not done your research of what they've done since 2016? Like, come on, man. So, he's been better. He hasn't been total crap, but he's definitely been much better, in the second half of the season. And I feel like the Cubs have kind of benefited. But, yeah, they definitely needed an outfielder, because Almora at this point is more of a defensive replacement, and he's more of an offensive liability. Ian Happ, there was so much promise and praise behind Ian Happ, and he hasn't really been cutting it out yet for the Cubs. So they needed a guy. Castellanos was with Detroit on the full all-out rebuild. Had to get rid of somebody, and got some decent pieces, but Castellanos has really worked out so far for the Chicago Cubs. I'm trying to think, what else do I want to talk about baseball, because at this point I'm more or less ready to talk a hell of a lot of football, because we most definitely have to preview the NFC East. I'm looking forward to that, because as you know, as I told everybody at the beginning of the show, that I do a podcast called Arch Rivals, and everybody are AFC fans except for myself. And so I remember what I said last week. I was just so happy to get done with the AFC, because even though my Super Bowl winner is in the AFC, it's still boring to me for some odd reason. But now we're going to start getting into the cream of the crop. This is where the show takes a whole 180, because I plays no games when it comes to the NFC. No games. You know what I'm saying? I got nothing but thoughts about the North, which we'll do next week. We're gonna do the East. You know how I love about the South, and then we got the West. So definitely looking forward to that stuff. Did we lose Mack on the line real quick? Is he gonna call back? Are we gonna call him back?
Yeah, we lost him. The call keeps dropping. So
okay.
I don't know if we can get him back on. We will, but if it's too much, I don't know if we can do it.
All right, that's fine. But yeah, so that's pretty much everything for baseball. I actually wanted to bring up a story here, and I'm going to pull it up because I'm in this group, and let me see if I can find this story because it was absolutely.
Trying to get Mack back on. He says he's in a better area right now. So.
Okay, cool. While we do that, I'm actually looking for this story, and I'm trying to do this. App's Edge is driving me nuts on this phone. I love this phone, but that App's Edge is driving me crazy. Where in the deuce is it? But there was a story about a guy who supposedly failed a drug test because he tried to use fake urine. He tried to use female urine, and whoever's urine he used, it came back pregnant. So he's been suspended indefinitely for trying to use a fake urine sample.
I think we have Mack back on the line.
Is Mack back on? Mack,
hey guys, I'm back on. I'm sorry, guys. Sorry about that, man. I'm back on.
No, you're all good. I had brought up the story before we go into full-fledged football about this guy who I'm trying to find his name. It's on here somewhere. I'm in this group and they post like 6 million things at a time, and so whenever I want to look for a story, I can't freaking find it. But the guy who failed the drug test by taking urine, using a female urine sample, and it came back pregnant.
God.
So he got suspended. He's been suspended indefinitely for trying to use a fake drug test.
Who is that, Nick?
I'm trying to find this name.
That's crazy. You know, the fact of the matter is, Nick, if you want to cheat the system, you know, more power to you. But if you're not even smart enough to cheat the system, you just stop. Just stop.
Well, I think the funny thing is that I think the funny thing out of all this is he's gonna have some interesting news to tell when he goes back. You know, like so how'd it go? Oh, I got suspended from I got suspended for using your pee. Oh, by the way, they told me you pregnant. You know what I'm saying?
That's a bad way to find out.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So you didn't almost kill two birds with one stone where you find out whoever you supposed to be with is now Prego. Whoever's pee you was using was Prego, and
you have to play it off like you're the one who's pregnant too. You're like, no, that's my piss. I'm pregnant.
Yeah, right, exactly. Dude, what a joke. The things that people will do to cover up the weed, but you know, unfortunately, it's still illegal in the NBA. You know, you can't use it, and it's unfortunate. I can't find this dude's name. I'll find it.
What, Nick, I want to say something on that because you know, listen, I think both of us are pretty much on the same boat right now. That okay, marijuana is a good way to, you know, get rid of the pill epidemic and get rid of the opioid dependency and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, and this is where Stephen A. Smith has become famous for it. Get off the weed. You know, it's not about the weed. It's about the legality of it. It's about that it's not allowed yet. And you know what I'm saying? Listen, Steven Jackson has been on record saying that he smoked weed his whole career, and you know, good for the man. He never got caught. But if you get caught, there's no such thing as now I'm a marijuana advocate. You know, no, you messed up. You failed the test, and you didn't do it. You didn't do it how you're supposed to do it, and that's it. Simple as that.
Right. Now I agree. You know, and I remember in an interview with Ice Cube that he was talking about, you know, we're gonna test it out and we're gonna monitor it, and then, you know, hopefully we can give our results to the NBA. His name is DJ Cooper. DJ Cooper is his name, who tried to pass along pregnant pee to pass a drug test. So
Idiot.
Yeah, complete moron. Like, if you're gonna find somebody, I mean, the least you could do is find a dude. But maybe his whole crew was smoking weed that day. Who freaking knows? You know.
Yeah, and it's like, you know what, dude? Then if you want to do the crime, you better be ready to do the time, or be prepared not to use your girlfriend's piss.
Yeah, exactly. Let me do a quick read real quick. All the service you need under one roof. You started, or this is brought to you by Intrinsic. All the services you need under one roof. You started a business because you believe in what you do. Let Intrinsic Marketing bring your product to service or service to the market. That's what they do best. Intrinsic has the services, tools, and expertise to make it happen all in one play. I wish right now, I'm not done with the read, but I wish right now you could see what's going on, because I feel like one of those guys that's like in like the basement, and he's on like local TV, and he's gonna tell you every conspiracy theory, or I'm trying to like sell real estate books. That's how I feel right now. Like I'm gonna freaking sell some real estate books. Like let me tell you about Intrinsic Marketing, okay? We got web design, we got social media, copywriting, targeted ads, and more. So if you don't take our word for it, see it for yourself. Visit intrinsicchicago.com. That's INTRINSICchicago.com. You don't want to mention it. If you mention my name in this, you'll get 15% off. You know, I feel like one of those guys leaning over on this table right now.
I'm ready to give you my money right now. I just pulled it out of my wallet. It's there. Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right, so we had our first weekend of... All right, I brought the show back up. All right, so we had our first weekend of preseason football. We all got a small taste of what our respective teams will look like. We saw some first teamers. We saw some. I feel like I saw some interesting things. One team in particular that that kind of stuck out for me a little bit, since we're talking about the NFC East, were the New York Giants. You know, we're talking about a team here that they drafted Daniel Jones with the 6th overall pick. Say what you want to, whether it's preseason or not, Daniel Jones looked hella good on, I think it was Thursday, against the New York Jets. You know, and I know, again, everyone's like, oh, but it's preseason. Like, you're not really looking at preseason for the wins and losses. You're looking at preseason for individual play. I don't care if they're playing the third string. I don't care if they're playing the second string. If you make crisp throws, you're going to make crisp throws. If you throw picks, you're going to throw picks. Daniel Jones, for what it's worth, what he go, like 5 for 5 or 5 for 6 for like 56 yards and a touchdown. The man looked really good against the Jets.
Yup, and that goes back to what we said when he got drafted. Nick, it's like, you know what? If you feel like you got your guy, I don't care if it was pick number 3, pick number 30, pick number 300. If you feel like you got your guy, you got your guy. And listen, he didn't make the Giants look too bad, man. He made a couple NFL throws. Right now, you know, the number one thing right now is for this guy is they got no wide receivers left, Nick. I mean, this team is not well equipped right now. They've had some injuries. Sterling Shepard already broke his thumb, I believe. So basically, it's Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley. But no, I agree, man. I saw the highlights of that. He made a couple NFL throws. He looks good in the pocket too. So you can see exactly what the Giants saw in this guy. They saw a guy who, by the way, was in the Manning camps, meaning, you know, the Peyton Manning and Archie Manning and Eli Manning, quarterback camps since he was a little kid. And you could see the effect it's had on his mechanics, on his drop back, on his ability to kind of recognize where the pocket is. I would venture to say that this guy's going to be on the field, Nick, by like week 5.
Oh, no, I agree with you. Because the thing is with the Giants, and we'll get into more detail as we preview the NFC East. I think the thing with the New York Giants is it's the same thing that I had said about the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. I think it's time to look at life without Eli. You know, think about it. How many years apart was Peyton from Eli? Like maybe 3 or 4. You know, Peyton came in at what, 98, and then I think the what's the names? The Giants got him. Maybe it was even more than that. Maybe I think it's like 5 or 6, because I think what's his name was drafted.
Yeah, it is like 5 or 6.
Right, because I thought it was like 01 or 02 when Manning said he wouldn't play for the Chargers. Let me tell you what, Peyton Manning has now been retired for at least, 3 years, 4 years now?
Yeah.
And so now you're almost getting caught up to where Eli would have been in the league in the same years as Peyton. And the thing is that Eli is not the same quarterback he once was. He's taken a lot of hits. That offensive line isn't good. He lost OBJ. We know that he loves throwing to his tight ends, but it's just like Eli's not making the same throws. And, we know he's the younger brother of Peyton, but man, this is why you draft Daniel Jones at number 6. Because again, that was your guy. You know that he's been with Eli, so you know that Eli will help Daniel Jones through the ropes. And we've seen a great career out of Eli Manning. He's beat the formidable New England Patriots twice, which is unheard of for what it's worth. So the fact that he went on the grandest stage of them all and defeated the New England Patriots twice, it's an amazing accomplishment. He has nothing left to prove. So I'm with you where I think that at some point, especially if the Giants feel that their season is going to be lost, or if Eli gets hurt, I hope that doesn't happen, but you got to throw that in there. Daniel Jones at some point, I'm with you between weeks 5 and maybe 7. So 5, 6, or 7, I think we're going to see Daniel Jones as the full-time starter of the New York Giants.
Yeah, and you know what, Nick? I'm going to put it to you like I put one of my really good friends who's a Giants fan, because he said, well, Eli has earned this, and Eli is still a serviceable quarterback, and da-da-da-da-da. And the number one thing I told him, I said, listen, if you want to evaluate Eli, let's put ourselves in this scenario. If the Giants cut tied with Eli today, do you think he'd have a starting job tomorrow? I really don't think so, Nick. I don't see any team so struggling right now on the quarterback side that they would call up Eli and say, come be our starting quarterback.
True.
So to me, this is just an exercise in almost like, we appreciate you, Eli. Here's one more go at it. And that's not how you run a franchise, Nick. I mean, listen, it's very clear that this offensive line is no good. And now you're going to have a quarterback who's almost 40 years old, and he's basically approaching the latter half of his career, and he can't move. He doesn't really have the mobility. He's never had the mobility, but right now he's more immobile than he is mobile. So, you're putting this guy in a position to get whomped, because we already talked about this when we tried to preview the team a couple weeks ago. Teams are going to stack the box now. I mean, there's going to be 8, 10-man boxes at some point, because Saquon, listen, if you want to give the ball to him 30 times a game, more power to you. But if I'm an opposing defense, I'm going to make Eli beat me before I let Saquon beat me with any of those 30 carries.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that 100%. And this is one of them things where the Giants are they're gonna have to suck for a few years. It's a part of the rebuilding process. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the Houston Texans had a few number 1 picks that they had to take care of, or a few top 5, top 10 picks before, they're at the situation where they're at now. They're a decent football team. We've seen the Indianapolis Colts take a few L's. When Peyton was gone, they won one game or something. The Bears too. Right, exactly. So, it's okay. Sometimes, as much as you want to relive on the glory years, you gotta move out of the way, and I think this is the time where the Giants have to put the foot down, like, you know what, Eli, you've done a lot for this franchise, but we're gonna have to bench you to sit down. I mean, we're gonna bring in Daniel Jones, and hopefully that doesn't turn into a Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers situation. Where it's time to pass the throne, and then when you do, the former king, I'm worried, popping my fault. The former king is acting like he can't help the current king out. And in my opinion, it's jealousy and BS. And that's what Brett did to Aaron Rodgers. I feel like eventually Aaron Rodgers is going to do it to whoever is going to replace him in the next 2 years. Hopefully we won't see that with Eli in the transition to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and Nick, I think that's part of the reason why the Giants were so gung-ho about Jones was because they figured, you know what, this kid has a relationship with Eli, he has a relationship with Peyton, he has a relationship with Archie to an extent as well, and he's a kid who has been around this guy Eli for a long time, and you know, honestly, I don't see Eli being that type of person either. I mean, obviously, I don't know him personally, but if you ask me about the personality traits of Eli compared to Brett, I would say that Eli is a different guy, and even to a certain extent, Aaron Rodgers, because I do believe what you're saying about Aaron Rodgers, where there's almost this sense of like, you know, you're almost trying to stick it to your team by saying, oh, you want to draft this guy? Okay, yeah, draft him, and you know, when he comes in, I'm not helping him do shit. So,
right.
So no, I think that's part of the reason why the Giants were so gung-ho about him. I thought they were nervous about Haskins because, you know what, if we bring in this guy Haskins, who knows how Eli reacts to it. You know, the part of the problem, Nick, is that I think Eli thinks he has some years left in his tank.
Yeah, I think so
he
too.
legitimately thinks, you know what, I've got a good 2 seasons left in me. And listen, man, we've been watching the last couple of years, and I'm not sure I can say that. I think Eli, man, he really has to start to do some evaluation of, you know, of who he is right now. His arm, Nick, is just so brutal sometimes. He can't even make, you know, he can't make those 30-yard NFL throws anymore sometimes if he's not fully set. And with a terrible offensive line, you're not going to be fully set ever. So they've got some issues on their hands. Honestly, Nick, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a beating taken by Eli in the first couple of weeks, and the team just basically comes out and benches him because they don't have any investment left in Eli. There's, you know, really, the allure is gone. I know Giants fans love the guy. He's always going to be the guy who got them the 2 Super Bowl rings, and he's always going to be the guy that's the Patriots killer. I think that's enough for them. I don't think they need to see, you know, them trotting out the corpse of Eli Manning every single week, you know, in hopes of him being better.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. And speaking of, since we're heavily into the NFC East, excuse me, I'm glad you brought up Dwayne Haskins, because if there was a quarterback that didn't look good out of this draft class, was the aforementioned Dwayne Haskins. Here's a guy who either Dwayne Haskins was really that bad, or the Cleveland defense is scary good, because Dwayne Haskins could not make a legit throw for the majority of the few series that he had.
Yeah, no, and on top of that, Nick, the Redskins are looking at the same offensive line situation as the Giants, just terrible offensive line situation. Their best offensive lineman right now is holding out and is probably not going to be coming back. Trent Williams, their left tackle. So, you know, obviously he probably wouldn't have started in that game either way. But, yeah, I did see the highlights of that. I honestly, Nick, you mentioned it. I will say this. That Cleveland team is going to look scary, okay? They have got some real hitters on that first-team defense. They went out and brought in Olivier Vernon to be their, you know, the guy on the opposite side of Garrett, who's you know, going to end up being one of the best defensive ends in the league when it's all said and done, Myles Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you bring in
Sheldon Richardson.
Sheldon Richardson, yeah. So they've got a bunch of big boys on that front seven. They drafted really well in the secondary, and they've got a couple guys. But Haskins didn't look good, and that Redskins team I don't think is going to be very good. And I think we're going to see Jay Gruden be fired by the end of the year. If I read correctly, I guess Jay Gruden is the odds-on favorite to be the first coach fired in the NFL this year. So, and it couldn't happen to a better person as far as I'm concerned. I am. If you know me best, you know that I am not a fan of Jay Gruden. I still to this day think that him and Mike Shanahan
had really ruined and derailed the career of RG3. I think RG3 was a great young promising quarterback, and for everything that, I was really pissed off when they put RG3 in that playoff game where the FedEx Field was so terrible and he made a cut and his knee damn near separated from his entire leg. And I was like, why would you put him out there if you know that he couldn't play? And like the funny thing was I got into a heated argument about this with one of my co-hosts on the other show, and he was like, well, how come he didn't say anything? Dude, most players are going to try and be Superman and say, oh, no, I want to play. I can play this, that, and everything else. But the problem is that you as the coach and you as the trainer, you know that if you know that a man is really coming off of serious knee injury and you have a shitty field to play on, you don't put him on the field and especially if this man is your long-time investment. You traded up and traded future picks to get the reigning and defending Heisman Trophy winner at the time. And you're going to tell me in the first 10 games before he got hurt, he didn't give you enough of a resume for you to say, man, we got to protect this investment. That's why we got Kirk Cousins now as a backup that we drafted 3 rounds later to make sure that if something goes down with RG3, that we don't have a good backup plan. And Mike Shanahan, who was on record of saying that he didn't even want RG3 in the first place. He told Daniel Snyder to stay at 10. We'll get Ryan Tannehill. Let's not trade the future. Daniel Snyder wanted RG3. So basically, what Shanahan derailed RG3's career is almost the same equivalent of what Jeff Fisher did to Vince Young's career. Because Norm Chow, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, told the Tennessee Titans to get Matt Leinart. I've worked with this guy. He knows the playbook. But the owner went out and got Vince Young, and then all that nonsense with Vince Young came out, where all of a sudden he left the house without his phone, and they saying he was depressed. He was depressed, and
he was overweight.
He was overweight, and all this other BS for a guy that won Rookie of the Year and single-handedly put the Titans in the playoffs that year. So
what a great point.
Right, and all of a sudden you derail his career because that's not the guy you wanted. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So and then
you know what,
no, go ahead.
Let me say this, Nick, really quick. That guy who said, well, why didn't RG3 just say that? Like, Nick, we both know this, man. If what would happen to a player? He would get crucified if he said he didn't want to go out and play on that field, right? If a guy came out and said, well, my knee's not feeling too well. No, that's not what happened. It is the responsibility. It is the obligation of the head coach and the training staff to make the right decision. The player's always going to go out there. It's about the training staff. And this is another great example of what happens when you have your owner meddling in on football decisions. I mean, Dan Snyder, this guy needs to get a clue. You have to get a clue of what you've done over the last 10 to 15 years and single-handedly almost, ruined every single momentum push this team has had. I mean, when it comes down to it, we can also talk about how this team let go of Kirk Cousins and brought in Alex Smith for no reason.
Yeah, that's true.
And Jay Gruden just comes out and basically says, well, yeah, we took a chance on the guy, and knowing that Alex Smith is up there in age and that, the Chiefs were obviously going to let him go. And, to me, man, this whole situation with the Redskins is just another example of an owner meddling into football decisions. And that Tennessee Titans example is so good, man. Why in the world did we see Vince Young come out and have a world beater year where everyone says this guy is going to come up and live up to expectation, and all of a sudden he falls off the face of the earth? That doesn't happen, on its own.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And then with Jay Gruden, do you remember that one game where Tampa went into Washington and absolutely just wiped the floor with them? And RG3 came out And when they were asking him some questions, and basically RG3 was so frustrated that he basically called his team out on national TV when he said, I need my blockers to block. I need my wide receivers to catch. I need to play better, this and that. And then Jay Gruden came right behind him talking about why quarterback needs to learn to play quarterback. You need to put him in the best position for your team to win. So if your starting quarterback is starting to send some BS on why your team plays better with Kirk Cousins under center, then you once again have derailed this man's career. So if Jay Gruden's big, stupid, dumbass ends up getting fired within the first 3 weeks, it could not happen to a better guy. And I said it last week on the other podcast that if lightning struck Mike Shanahan in the ass for letting this even happen in the first place, it could not happen to two better people, because they most definitely derailed RG3. RG3 should not be a backup quarterback to Lamar Jackson. That's how good RG3 is, but that's where his career is at now, because he didn't properly heal. He didn't properly get a second chance in Washington, and now he's a backup? Come on, man. That's nonsense.
Yeah, and I'm still searching for exactly what Jay Gruden is good at, other than having Gruden as his last name.
I'm with you on that.
What has this guy contributed that basically this guy has been in the same position basically how long? Almost 5 years now, right, Nick? He's been with the team?
Yeah.
So what has this team done in 5 years to warrant this guy still being around? I mean, we get it. Like, John Gruden has made a name for himself. I don't know about you, but I'm a fan of John Gruden. I like what he does. I thought, last year was obviously a tough year for him, but I think this year the Raiders team is going to look better. But I can see what John has done in the past to warrant everybody sort of looking at him this way, right? He's John Gruden, the guy who, took the Bucs to a championship, and, he revitalized the Raiders before getting to the Bucs. So, I see what he's done, but what exactly has Jay Gruden done? Nothing.
Right.
So, this guy, good riddance to him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I want to get into your team, the Bears. I didn't get to see too much of the game, but I know they lost. They had their home preseason game and they lost. But, again, we're not talking about wins and losses. Who gives a rat's ass? But tell me what it is that you saw with the Bears. What were some positives? What do you think that they are probably going to need to work on, going into week number 2 in the preseason, because I'm pretty sure some cuts are going to be happening here soon. So what did you see in the game against Carolina that you were happy with, and where do you think that the Bears still need some work on?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, the offense didn't look all that great. I mean, I think Mitch got a series or two. I caught back up on it late into the first quarter. I thought David Montgomery was the guy that really stuck out. He looked tremendous, patient. He has a lot of Matt Forte in him, Nick. He is not the fastest guy, not the biggest guy, not the strongest guy, not the quickest guy, but just somehow finds a way to fall forward and get 4 or 5 yards even on bad runs. And it's kind of showing exactly how well Matt Nagy can evaluate talent at running back, where he lets go of Jordan Howard because he just didn't feel that Jordan Howard was the right fit for his system. He brings in this kid Montgomery as the first pick of their draft this year, I believe in the second or third round. And this kid out of Iowa State is good, man. He is legit. He's going to be, I think he's going to be a 1,000-yard runner this season. I potentially see him, running for the Rookie of the Year, and that's my honest opinion, because he had a touchdown, he had a couple of long runs, a screen pass. He was pass blocking really well, so he was the bright spot for me. And also Roy Robertson Harris in that defense looked really, really good up front. The other thing that stuck out, they had a kicking competition between Eddie Pinheiro and another kicker by the last name of Fry. Pinheiro ended up missing a kick, and Fry, you should have seen it, Nick. It was almost comical. Last year's kick with Cody Parkey, notoriously was a 43-yard kick.
Right.
We all know about what happened after that, the double doink. So this kid, Fry, comes in for that 43-yarder. He hit the 43-yarder, and the crowd goes crazy as if they won the Super Bowl. So we saw that happen, and I think the team has a little bit better of an idea of what they want to do at the kicker. The one thing that still needs work right now is the secondary. They are not we've got a lot of really good prospects that are coming up as cornerbacks, but the safeties still need really, really heavy work right now. Other than Eddie Jackson and HaHa Clinton Dix, who are going to be the starters this year, depth is really low. Deion Bush is on a contract year, so he's got a prove-it year that, maybe he can be something better. But like DeAndre Houston Carson's no good. They really don't have a ton of options at that DB slot. So that's something to be seen. But yeah, you know what it is, Nick. It's preseason. You're focusing on the players and not the results. So
right.
I don't really necessarily care that they lost, but you did see some things in there. I'm gonna be watching very closely next game to see a little bit more progression out of this first team because, quite frankly, I know Roquan Smith had a good day, on the defensive side, but this is a team, Nick, that the Bears, man, they've got a lot to prove. I think a lot of Bears fans are still riding the high of last year, and they still kind of feel the feeling that this team is elite. And I quite frankly think the talent is 100% there, but we both know that this is a lot more than just, okay, let's go back and do what we did last year. No, this, teams are going to be adjusting to Matt Nagy. Teams are going to be adjusting to Mitch Trubisky. Teams are going to be, really, really heavily scrutinizing this defense and making sure that they are not going to be just, subjects to Khalil Mack every single play. So the Bears have a lot to prove, man. But if you ask me your first game, I think, David Montgomery looked really good at the running back position. I think the kickers, had a good audition. And then again, on the defensive side, Roy Robertson Harris looks like a steal. That front seven of the Bears is going to be nasty, Nick. They've got some really, really good depth right now. I'm really happy about it, but we've got some work to do in the secondary for sure.
For sure. Just real quick, I didn't get to see too much of the Bucs Steelers game yesterday. I was kind of in. I had to work last night, and it's my own personal fault because I totally forgot that the Bucs were playing Friday night. I wasn't even supposed to work on Friday, and I went in and took an extra shift, and then I was like, "Damn it, they're on NFL Network tonight." What I did see, the little bit that I did see, a lot of it, I think a lot of the focus on Tampa has to do with how is Jameis going to adjust with the new offense under BA and Byron Leftwich. And I looked at the drive that they scored the touchdown on. It was 12 plays, 81 yards. It was the only drive that Jameis was on. There were two things that stood out to me in this drive. A, the maturity level, and what I mean by maturity level of Jameis Winston is in his decision-making. There was one particular play where he escapes the pressure, rolls out. The old Jameis would have thrown that ball into some tight coverage and pray to God that it doesn't get picked off. This Jameis took the 6-7 yards. I think he got like 10 or 12 yards out of it for a first down. That's what I want to see. Okay. You don't have to get, if Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians can get in Jameis's head that you don't have to score everything on one play. Like you could get the good 10, 12-yard chunk. Let's get a first down. Let's call a fresh play. Let's keep the offense going. If they can beat that in Jameis's head, I think Jameis cuts down on his interceptions. He cuts down on the turnovers. And then it just keeps the defense on the sideline rested, and it gets more points on the board for Tampa Bay. I thought that was huge. I thought another thing that I was kind of impressed with was Ronald Jones. Now, I've been one of the biggest advocate for Ronald Jones. I thought Peyton Barber actually looked. Let me talk about the whole running game. Because I thought Peyton Barber got off some really good runs, and I thought that if Ronald Jones could have broken at least one tackle on one of his runs, he would have been out. So I feel that the offensive line is starting to get better. I think that if they can bring in Alex Kappa, because here's the thing that, and of course, Bucs fans are very frustrated because this team has not been in the playoffs since 2009. And I understand, it's been a very frustrating time. last year we drafted Ronald Jones. Okay. Ronald Jones didn't see a lot of time on the playing field because he had a hard time understanding the playbook.
Yeah.
Ronald Jones was in an interview after practice like a week or so ago. And of everything Ronald Jones said, he said, they asked him about him putting on the 20 pounds of muscle. He said, I feel like I hit the hole stronger. I'm a lot stronger. I'm a lot faster. And then what he said that really stuck out to me, he said, I'm ahead of learning the playbook. That means the coaches have sat down with him and they have studied the playbook with him so he can understand. Something that didn't happen under Dirk Cutter last year, which is why I keep trying to explain to most Bucks fans to relax about wanting to go out and spend money on all these other guys. We got a good crew here. They just need to be coached properly. So Ronald Jones looking good. The offensive line looked decent. It didn't look great, but it looked decent. Yeah. And then I got to take a look at I saw a few of the kicks that were attempted by Matt Gay. Matt Gay is probably going to end up winning the kicking job. This man has a leg of steel. He's been bombing them in practice. He bombed a couple of them yesterday. I think he may have missed an extra point, but he looked really good yesterday. So, and then defensively, I'm with you. The same problems that you're having with the Bears, I feel it's the same way with Tampa. It's a young secondary with MJ Stewart II, or MJ Stewart Jr., excuse me, Carlton Davis III, CD3, I'm trying to think of oh my goodness, I blanked. But we got a young secondary. Vernon Hargraves was another one. And I know he got picked on a lot and he didn't look really sharp, but he did make some plays. So it's a young secondary. But the Bucks got bad news because now Vita Vea is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with some knee injury, but he doesn't need surgery on it. So they dodged that bullet, but he's going to miss some time again. You know, he missed the preseason last year too. Yeah. But overall, even though they lost yesterday, I found a lot of positives with Tampa, and I'm really looking forward to their performance next week.
Yeah, and I think, Nick, you know, I would say just from an outsider's perspective, watching Tampa Bay, you know, the select amount of times that I have, you know, the number one thing with the Bucks is the commitment to the run, right? It's always been, you know, are they going to be able to have enough commitment to the run game to give Jameis a little bit of breathing room? You know, the part of the reason why I think people have the skewed idea of who Jameis is because of what this team was when he first walked in, which is a team that would fall behind early and would need Jameis's help to get back. And they weren't a team that was riding the running game very much.
Right.
And this year, they have to have this commitment to handing the ball off at least 20 times a game to make sure that they're keeping defenses honest, because turnovers are one thing, but when you are forcing your quarterback to have to do everything, you're obviously going to have problems. I mean, I say the same thing about, you know, when Bears fans mention Mitch Trubisky, I say, well, okay, you know, Mitch has got his own issues, and Mitch has certainly got a lot of, room to improve. But, you know, the first year he was here, we had John Fox as the coach, and he had no idea how to get this kid going, and teams were just picking on us. And that's you're not gonna see progress out of a quarterback with that. So, you know, similar to that, you got to see. And I think Bruce Arians has a really good idea of this, as you probably know. You know, from his history, and you know, I'm really interested in Ronald Jones, even specifically on the fantasy side, Nick, because I know Peyton Barber right now is looked at as a workhorse right now,
right?
But you know, Ronald Jones to me is a really interesting pickup late in fantasy drafts, because this is a guy who if what we saw in college is going to remain true, I know he had injuries last year that prevented him from being there, and then obviously he had some issues with the playbook. But this year, if he can figure things out and give this team a legitimate backfield, and in unison with Barber, this team can be dangerous because they've got the weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Even with Humphreys and Deshaun Jackson departing, you still got Chris Godwin who's looking to break out right now.
Who scored a touchdown, by the way? Yeah, he scored a touchdown in that series too.
Yeah, and Godwin is right now everything out of camp has this guy being a beast and ready to step in, as a big playmaker. You got O.J. Howard, got Cameron Brayton, and now you got this. You're going to have an offensive line that's going to be makeshift a little bit, but all they really have to do is figure things out, find a flow, and let this defense find an identity. Right, that's another thing. This is a young defense. They're trying to find, make some shifts to a new defense. So it's going to be interesting to see, and obviously it's still early in the preseason. We're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see what these teams do in the next 2 or 3 games to figure out exactly who these teams are going to be.
Yeah, 100%. And another thing is, I saw that they might try an experiment when Vea comes back. That maybe they might put Vea on that defensive end spot instead of putting him at nose tackle. They might leave Sue at nose tackle and put Vea as defensive end in a 3-4. Well, that could be crazy.
Ooh.
Yeah. I thought the same thing. I'm like, because if he comes back around week 4, you probably figure he get his feet wet around maybe week 6, and you're gonna move him over to the defensive end. Well, that's a lot of muscle to try and defend a guy like that. Especially your guards and your center's gonna need help. So it's gonna make for some good one-on-one matchups and stuff like that. But we'll see what happens. But I, for the most part, was impressed for the little bit that I saw with Tampa, and I'm really looking forward to that. But before we get into the NFC East fully, and we talk about Tampa, I know it's hot as balls down in Tampa Bay. And speaking of being hot as balls, Nux 3-in-1 refresher spray is all about making sure that if you got to go out and take care of some business, whether it's with a female or you got a little, business meeting and, it's hot and you can't really go take a shower and you're going to be late and whatnot. 3-in-1 Nux refresher spray. When you're running around on a hot day, you feel sweaty and sticky, but you don't have time to go take a shower or change your clothes. What do? There's finally a solution to that. It's Nux Refresher 3-in-1. I have it right here. This is the Zeus scent. I could have probably used some Nux for as hot as hell as it has been over the last handful of days here in the Chicagoland area, and for as hot as hell as it has been at work, because I work behind a 540 pizza degree oven. God bless. I could have probably used this Zeus scent and then went ahead and went out to the club and whatnot and still smelled like a full grown-ass man and not smelling like I just came, straight from the fields to the club. It's not probably going to, really work well. But it is designed specifically for men, especially the undercarriage, armpits, clothing, sports pads, and athletic equipment like gloves, helmets, or anything that gets nasty or dirty during activity. Nux 3-in-1 refresher spray has no aluminum ingredients, and it's safe to be effective all over the body. Go to mynux.com. That's my KUNCKS.com. That's mynux.com. I probably should have sprayed this when I was in here. Matter of fact, just to kind of not veer off the subject, just to talk like a complete idiot. What's the name? Rachel gave me some Cool Ranch Doritos from the little variety pack, and now you could write like personalized messages on the chips. Man, I'd be screwing with my kids if I had kids, and I'd be putting the dumbest stuff on them bags of chips. Be like, make sure you wipe your behind when you come out of that bathroom, and just make sure that all the kids see it and laugh like hell. You know what I'm saying? I'll be that dad. I embarrass the bejesus out of my kids. If I had them, but I don't have no kids. At least none that I know of. I don't have any kids. All right. So we are now have hit the NFC. We're going to hit the NFC East. The way that we like to do this is we take the teams that we think are going to suck. We'll go with them first. And then we'll finish with excuse me, we'll finish with the team we think are going to win the division. And now that I sit here and think about it, I'm confused because I want to start with the Giants first, but I really can't stand the Washington Redskins. But I'll
Yeah, I was about to say. I think we're in unison about that. That on paper right now the Giants are probably worse, but I think the Redskins are going to end up being worse.
So bringing up. Okay, there we go. Bringing up the depth chart of the New York Giants. Obviously, Eli Manning is probably going to be the stone cold starter. Well, I shouldn't say stone cold, but he's going to be the consensus starter for the New York Giants going into the season. Obviously, we saw what Saquon Barkley did last year for a team that struggled with a bad offensive line. I mean, the kid is great. The kid was great in Penn State last year. He's probably primed for another decent year, maybe. But like you said earlier, Mac, it's going to be where you're going to have to stop Saquon Barkley, and you're going to have Eli and or Daniel Jones, depending on who it is, win you games. Looking at their wide receiver depth chart, they have Golden Tate, Benny Fowler. As you mentioned earlier, Sterling Shepard is out with the broken thumb. They did bring in Cody Latimer. They do have in the monster that is Evan Ingram. I think he will be, I think, a good key success in the upcoming of Daniel Jones.
And keep in mind that Golden Tate is suspended, I believe, for either the first 4 or 6 games of the season.
Oh, okay, so they won't even have them. So like you said earlier, this team is not going to have very much wide receiver depth to go to. So
no.
We'll see that come to light, I think, when you get to the dress rehearsal in week 3. When your starters are really going to play the first quarter and a half, if not the first 2 quarters, to really get a rapport with the first team. We'll see how Eli and or Daniel Jones works with that first team, but that's going to be interesting. And then you're looking at the offensive line is not great. Nate Solder, Will Hernandez, Joe Jalapio, Kevin Zeitler, and Mike Remmer. So it's kind of almost like a makeshift line. Remember last year they had Eric Flowers. He's gone. He was pretty much a revolving door. I remember because Eric Flowers actually was in that Jameis Winston draft where they wanted the kid that got drafted by the Redskins. You know what I'm talking about? The big white guy. Shen is his last name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay,
Sure.
Scherf, Brendan Scherf. There you go. Thank you.
Sure.
That's who the Giants really wanted. But the Redskins beat them to it, so they had to go with Eric Flowers. It really didn't work out. Hold on, let me bring my phone back up. And then looking at
was terrible last year. They cut his ass.
Yeah, no, he was horrible. He's one of the reasons why what's his name was getting beaten around in the first place, Eli.
Yeah,
so he was bad. Looking at their defense, they drafted Dexter Lawrence. The Giants, again, here's the thing with the Giants, because with the Giants, it's like, okay, you're sitting there at 6. Josh Allen fell to you. You needed defensive line help. Instead, you went and got your guy, Daniel Jones, because you felt as if the Redskins could have been in play to take him later on down the road. So you go out, you draft Daniel Jones at 6, and then Giants fans are super pissed off. They're like, oh, we could have got him at 17. We probably could have got him in the second round, blah, 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 this and that. So at 17, you go out and you draft Dexter Lawrence. But remember, Dexter Lawrence is a part of that Clemson defensive line who the Raiders took Salim Farrell, who many thought was the weakest of the Clemson defensive line. So you kind of lucked out. Right. Yeah. So you kind of lucked out by them taking the weakest guy, and you get Dexter Lawrence. So it's not all so much a bad thing for the Giants, but, they also got Dalvin Tomlinson, so they're running a 3-4. Alec Ogletree, it looks like he's hurt. Remember, they did make the OBJ trade, which landed them Jabril Peppers to kind of play safety in that secondary. So before we get into the schedule, what are your thoughts so far on because they also got Janoris Jenkins on here as well. Antoine Bethea is out there playing safety with him. So kind of based on what we said about the depth chart, what are your thoughts on the depth chart of the Giants?
Yeah, you know what, Nick? This is not going to be a good team this year. I don't think they're going to be, atrocious. I think they've got enough weapons on the offensive side. I think Saquon will carry them a few games. He'll probably win them a couple games by himself. But this defense is not going to be good. I mean, they're transitioning to a 3-4. You know what it's like when you have to do that. It's not a one-year process, and certainly it takes a really heavy effort when it comes to the drafting and the free agency side to build that. And they just haven't built that. I think Janoris Jenkins is a great player. He's had a great career, but he's not what he once was.
Right.
I like Jabril Peppers, but to me, that was Cleveland. That was New York almost trying to squeeze everything they could out of Cleveland, because they made that Zeitler for they traded Olivier Vernon to Cleveland in exchange for Zeitler, and basically the OBJ trade came into play like a week after that.
Right.
So they just decided to combine the trade and just basically add Jabril Peppers. I think Jabril Peppers has a chance. I mean, obviously the kid was highly touted out of Michigan, and he did a lot of different things for them and never really lived up to things in Cleveland. He has a chance in New York, but I don't think this team is going to be very good, man. I think that offensive line is going to be tough to deal with. And Saquon, man, he can only do so much. And with Eli, being the guy that's going to start slinging it at first, I could see them. We'll get to the schedule portion after this, and we'll see exactly who they're playing and stuff. But it's going to be hard for me to imagine they can break, more than 8 wins this year.
Yeah, I got it up right now. So looking at their schedule, they start off at Dallas, home against Buffalo, at Tampa, back-to-back home games against Washington and Minnesota. They're at New England on a Thursday night, week 6, home against Arizona, at Detroit, then Monday night against Dallas, and then they're at the Jets before they get the bye week in week 11. And then they're at the Bears, home against Green Bay, at Philly on another Monday night game, home against Miami, at Washington, and they finish off at home against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm looking at maybe 5-11, 4-12 for this team. I'm with you. I just think that they're in a transitional year. They're gonna need a lot of help. I mean, they kind of got they got rid of OBJ. Eli's got one foot out the door. You're running a newer defense. The Giants are used to really running the 4-3. Now they got them running the 3-4. So maybe that's why I think Giants fans were so upset that they didn't take Allen with the 6th pick to really fit that 3-4 fit. But again, as we mentioned, if they feel like Daniel Jones is the guy that will help New York in the future, and that's who they wanted, and they didn't want to make any trades or any deals or have to give up any picks to try and go out there and get them, then we'll see in due time. But based on that schedule, I 4 to 5 wins, 4 or 5 wins maximum in my opinion for the New York Giants.
Yeah, and I'm still with you on that whole Allen thing. It almost made too much sense for them to draft him. Like, you're starting a new 3-4 defense. You need a pass rusher. You just traded your best pass rusher. You have no one left on the roster. There's one guy who's by far the best 3-4 linebacker in this draft. And they decided that clearly they wanted Jones. I don't know if they would have made. I imagine, just by the way that it looked, that Jones probably would have lasted to 17. But in my mind, if you love the guy that much, you probably could have made a trade for him or something like that.
Right.
So, I'm still a little bit upset about that, because it's like you really had a chance to bring in a really solid couple pieces to the defense, and they weren't able to do it. I think just based on that schedule, I only counted like 4 wins, that are, that should be easy. But I could see this team. I could see this team winning 4 or 5 games. But I could also see this team being revitalized by this Daniel Jones thing too. And that's another thing to keep in mind. Sometimes, man, when you got a quarterback out there with a noodle arm and he can't throw past 30 yards, and he ran the best receiver that this team has ever seen out of town, and the team isn't really gonna get going gung ho. But when you bring in a young guy who can sling the ball, he knows the offense. People out of camp have been saying that this guy has been working really hard. So, I see this team, like we talked about, week 5, 6, 7. I think he's going to take over, and I think he's going to try and give him a shot in the arm. But, I still don't see this team, past the 6-win mark right now.
Right. Me and you both on that one. So then let's go ahead and go to the Washington Redskins. We definitely said a lot about them earlier. Not good things at all. Right now, based on the depth chart, they got Colt McCoy as the alleged starter, Case Keenum right behind them. Then you got Dwayne Haskins, that's the third best quarterback. Obviously, Alex Smith, had the gruesome leg injury. He's still on the team. Running back wise, they have Adrian Peterson, Chris Thompson. Let's not forget that they're bringing back that Darius Geis will be back, the kid they drafted in the second round last year, tore his ACL in camp, so he'll be back again this year. But man, I'm looking at these wide receivers. Boy, it's terrible. Josh Doxson, Cam Sims, Trey Quinn. They do have the monster Jordan Reed at tight end. Looking at their,
You still got Paul Richardson, Nick?
They do playing wide receiver. They do, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably their best receiver, and when he's your best receiver, that's not good news.
Yeah, that you're right about that. Then looking at this offensive line, it's very interesting because the aforementioned Eric Flowers is playing guard on this team, and then you have Donald Penn. So you have Donald Penn, Eric Flowers, Chase Roulier, Brandon Scherf, who we mentioned earlier, and Morgan Moses. Yeah. So according to this depth chart, they don't even have what's his name on here? Trent Williams is not even on the depth chart while he holds out. And then the Redskins run the 3-4 as well. Matt Ioannidis, Darren Payne, Jonathan Allen. That's the kid they picked from Alabama, I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. Ryan Kerrigan, Sean Dion Hamilton, John Bostic, and Montez Sweat rounds out the front 7 for the Redskins. And then they picked up Landon Collins, Monte Nicholson, Josh Norman still on this team, and Quentin Dunbar. So just based on that depth chart, what do you think so far of the Redskins? I mean, aside from the bashing that we did with this dumbass team earlier, just based on that, what are your thoughts?
I gotta say, Nick, it's hard not to look at this team and almost throw your hands up like, what have they been doing the last few years? I mean, let's just take a look at that quarterback spot, first. Colt McCoy, Case Keenum, Alex Smith, and Dwayne Haskins. 3 out of those 4 guys are guys that
basically have just been, struggling to stay on rosters. Case Keenum had one good season and basically has ridden that wave since. Alex Smith they brought in, trying to be the savior, and obviously we saw what happened there. Colt McCoy, I mean, don't get me wrong, Colt McCoy's a decent guy to throw back there, but the fact of the matter is him being your projected starter right now should tell you everything you need to know about the competency of this team in its front office. I mean, I want to mention something about this whole Trent Williams thing, because I read this article about Trent Williams, and essentially, people are making this about a money holdout right now. It's not a money holdout. Trent Williams is pissed off at this team and this organization and this training staff. He had I want to say it was either a cyst or something on his head, and essentially the team misdiagnosed it, and he had to have like 3 or 4 separate surgeries to get this thing solved. And, when you are the best player on the team, which people, I don't think there's any argument that this guy is the most accomplished and best player on this offense at least, and you got your best player, and he basically is telling everybody that wants to listen to him that this team has no clue what they're doing. It's a bad sign, man. I think this defense, the story of this team the last 4 years almost since Jay Gruden has been around, is the defense has been just good enough to keep them around, and the offense has always sucked. And, at this point, I don't see it being any different. I think when you name that front seven, they, have some enticing names in that front seven. Obviously, that Landon Collins is good enough, and I know that, Josh Norman isn't what he was, but he's still a decent quarterback. But right now, man, just based on depth alone, you mentioned the wide receiver spot. That's, they're not in a good position right now, and Jordan Reed is going to get hurt. We both know this.
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
He's gonna be hurt by week 3, and then they're gonna have to go re-sign Logan Paul or something like that.
Yeah.
So we're right now, just based on that depth chart, we'll see what their schedule looks like, but I think this team has a chance to finish last in the division, just based on depth alone.
Yeah, dude, they're gonna have to go out and make a phone call to Chris Cooley real quick.
Chris Cooley, yeah, bring him out of retirement.
Their schedule looks like this. So they start off in Philly. They have back-to-back home games against against Dallas, and then a Monday nighter against the Bears. And then they're at the Giants, home against New England, at Miami, home against San Francisco, and then back-to-back away games, a Thursday nighter against Minnesota, and then at Buffalo. They get the bye week on week 10. Then to finish out their schedule, back-to-back home games against the Jets and Lions, at Carolina, at Green Bay, back-to-back home games against Philly and the New York Giants before they finish off in Dallas. 10-24. Okay, so the Redskins aren't in the game this year? Okay, the Thanksgiving, good.
Yeah, they got taken out of Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah, Dallas must be playing somebody else.
Yeah. Nick, I got to be honest with you. They're lucky right now they play the Giants twice, because the only other team that I just heard you mention is the Dolphins. That is probably going to be something that they'll be favorites for. Otherwise, their schedule isn't terrible. But my God, I could probably I can't imagine them winning more than 8 games. But I would probably venture to say a 6-10 one is probably conservatively what I would go for.
You know what? And that's actually legit, because if we think that Philly's as good as we think they are, then you're going to probably lose that. And then we'll see what happens with Dallas, and we'll review them next. But you could lose that. I don't see them beating the Bears at all. So then you get the win against the Giants, because they're probably going to be bad. But then look at this stretch of games. Well, I guess what did you say, the Dolphins? Okay, so you got New England.
I heard the Dolphins in there.
Yeah.
That's the only one. I was thinking Buffalo might be another one, but I honestly see Buffalo as a sleeper team this year. I think they've got a good enough defense, and that offense is going to progress. So, I saw the Dolphins and the 2 Giants games as the only ones that they're probably going to be favored at.
Yeah. Even the game against Detroit at home, there's a good chance that Detroit gets favored in that game.
And Detroit, man, I'm telling you, I'm not happy to say this, but Detroit made some serious moves this year. Defensively, they picked up like 4 or 5 different guys. They picked up Mike Daniels from the Packers. They pick up Flowers from New England. They're gonna be a legit defense this year, and if their offense can do something, they're gonna be a challenger in the North this year. So yeah, man, it's gonna be tough sledding for the Redskins this year.
Could very well be. So yeah, I'm with you. 4 wins, 5 wins, maybe. You saying 3? You know what? Because I can't stand the Redskins, I'm gonna join you on the 3 to 4. So we should have done them first before the Giants.
Yeah, and I will say this, Nick. I think the Giants are going to be better in the second half of the season than the Redskins than they would be in the first half. So nothing's a guarantee in that one.
Right. Then let's go to the circus freak show that is the Dallas Cowboys. This situation I don't want to say that it's crazy. What I want to say is I understand where Zeke is coming from. And Dallas might be in a little bit of trouble because here's the thing about Dallas. When I remember there was a year when I used to do the Sports Den podcast, okay? I once upon a time was on this Tony Romo bandwagon. For some odd reason, I thought Tony Romo was going to have the biggest comeback year and that he was going to snap off and this and that and everything else. And everyone called me stupid. They're like, you're hilarious. They said I didn't know what I was talking about, this and that and everything else. And all Tony Romo and the Dallas Cowboys did was got screwed out of what should have been a Super Bowl run for them, because in that year they beat Seattle on the road, which was impossible, and Dez Bryant caught that ball in the same year. So,
yeah.
But the thing with Dallas was I thought that the success for the Dallas Cowboys always has been a solid offensive line with a really good running back, because in that year, DeMarco Murray, before he lost his mind and went to Philly, all he did was the rushing leader. He was the rushing leader that year.
Yeah.
Now let's fast forward to 2019. I think Dak Prescott is an above average to good quarterback. I don't think he's great. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's elite. He's somewhere between above average to good. And them going out and acquiring Amari Cooper in the middle of the season last year really helped Dak have that number one guy. And it started to pay dividends. But this Ezekiel Elliott thing not only hurts as far as depth is concerned, because they went on, they picked up Alfred Morris, but Alfred Morris is not the same running back that Ezekiel Elliott is. So Ezekiel Elliott right now, with 2 years left on his contract, says that I want a brand new deal. The only thing is I feel like this is the wrong team to do that with, because Jerry Jones, as much as he might love Ezekiel Elliott, and as much as he's like, oh man, Zeke is kind of the backbone and cornerstone of the offense, no offense to Dak, this almost morale-wise will tear the Cowboys apart if they don't come out with a solution, whether you sign the guy and he comes back to camp, or you do what Colin Cowherd has been saying to do for the last 2 weeks since this mess popped up, which is trade Ezekiel Elliott, which as crazy as Jerry Jones is, I wouldn't put it past him if they ended up trading him, because Jerry Jones is that psycho freaking nuts.
Yeah. And, you got to take into consideration this, Nick. This is a team that just got out of a long and very, let's just say, contentious talk with DeMarcus Lawrence, and they finally were able to extend him. Dak Prescott is going to need a new deal soon. Amari Cooper is going to need a new deal soon. They have another cornerback that needs a new deal soon. This is a team that is like, they need to wrap some of these guys up. And I think part of what they were hoping to do was to basically get all of these guys together and say, we want to get all of you guys in here, but we're going to have to make some concessions. And I think Zeke Elliott is doing the right thing here. I'll be honest with you, Nick. I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I think what Le'Veon Bell did last year, or actually over the last 3 years almost,
Right.
is set a precedence for these running backs. And you know, let's be honest, it didn't necessarily work out to the advantage of Bell. Okay, yes, he ended up getting, you know, a longer term deal, and it wasn't a bridge deal, and he was able to get some money, but he didn't get all the money that he was hoping to get with that. But one thing he did teach these guys is that you're going to need to go out and take advantage of the value that you have at that moment. And with running back, Nick, you know how it goes. One bad year and your stock is done. And they draft a guy and they bring in a guy, and next thing you know, Zeke Elliott talking about, you know, he might be in a running back by committee. So I will say Zeke Elliott is a talent that we haven't seen at the running back position in a long time, and I think he's got the size, speed, and the you know, sort of the traits of a running back that are very special. But at the same time, I still see where the Cowboys are coming from. Man, we've got to lock up a lot of these guys right now, and but this is a good team, Nick. I mean, you know, people say what you want about the situation. I think, quite frankly, I think this deal's going to get done. You know, I don't know when, I don't know how, but I think this is a deal that's going to get done. And I don't think Jerry Jones is that dumb. I think he will find a way to get everyone to the table and find a way to get Zeke in because he knows how much this team needs Zeke. I mean, you remember what this team looked like when he was on that suspension?
Yeah.
And they weren't that good.
No.
And when he came back, everyone went, oh, he's what makes this offense go. So I think Jerry Jones, just with his all-in mentality, he's going to realize sooner or later we need this kid in here, and I think they're going to get a deal done soon.
Me too. So looking at this team's depth chart, and man, I'm going to tell you what, offensively, if they can get Zeke back, Dallas could be decent. So you got Dak at quarterback, and then I'm looking at your receiving core, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and Randall Cobb. Obviously, Randall Cobb replaces Cole Beasley, who went to Buffalo. So you bring in Randall Cobb, who for a long time was the number one receiver in Green Bay. Man, I think that's a really solid pickup. And then Jason Witten comes back from the booth. He's now going to be the starting tight end. And we all know how good the offensive line for the Dallas Cowboys has been. Tyron Smith, Connor Williams, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, and La'el Collins. You know, that offensive line is solid. And then looking at them defensively, as you mentioned, DeMarcus Lawrence, Antoine Woods, Malik Collins. And then they got Tyrone Crawford penciled in. That should have been Robert Quinn's spot. But now Robert Quinn got suspended for was it 2 or 4 games for the banned substance abuse policy, whatever it is. So he's gone out of there. And then, but let me tell you what, Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, and Sean Lee, that is a solid linebacking core if Sean Lee stays healthy. Because Leighton Vander Esch, remember, people clown Dallas for drafting him as high as they did in the first round. That man was a monster last year for Dallas.
He was.
Jalen Smith, they took they drafted him in the second round, when he came out from the full ACL tear in the college bowl game with Notre Dame. They told him, take your time whenever you want to come back. And Jalen Smith was really good last year too. So I think Van Der Esch is a really good linebacker. Jalen Smith is a really good linebacker. Hell, Sean Lee is a monster. The problem with Sean Lee is you just can't stay healthy. It's like every time he takes 2 steps forward, it's almost as bad as Luke Kuechly. Luke Kuechly, everyone considers him to be the best middle linebacker or the top 3 in the game, but it seems like every time Luke snaps, boom, he gets a concussion. Boom, he's out with an arm injury. Boom, he's out. Sean Lee is the same way, and I feel like Sean Lee is kind of the anchor of this defense. But if that linebacking core stays healthy, bro, that's solid. That is a solid linebacking core. And then the round out there, secondary at safety, Jeff Heath and Xavier Woods. and then Chidobe Awuzie and Byron Jones rounds out the secondary. So the secondary, I feel like this is almost New York Giants-esque of when they won the Super Bowls, where they didn't have the best secondary. You have if R.W. McQuarters is the best defensive back you got on your team, that's how you know that front seven was really good. But we know how good DeMarcus Lawrence is. Let's not forget that Taco Charlton is on this team as well. And then once Robert Quinn comes back from suspension, we all know how good of a sack machine he was when he was in L.A. or St. Louis/L.A. for a while. So depth chart wise, I got to give credit to Jerry Jones. He's really put a team not so much around Ezekiel Elliott because he's got the line, but now Dak Prescott at this point can say, hold on, I'm not going to ask for no money. Let me go out here and throw all these touchdown passes to Amari and Randall and Michael Gallup. And then I got my security blanket back in Jason Witten. I think Dak's going to have a really nice year if everything works out. If the stars align perfectly, Dak can have a really nice year this year.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, honestly, Nick, this offense has a chance to be elite this year if they bring back Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, this offensive line is no joke. Zach Martin, Travis Frederick, and Tyron Smith are three of the best offensive linemen in all of football. So you're looking at one of the best offensive lines in football. If you bring back Zeke and you make him happy, you've got one of the best, running backs in football. Amari Cooper has done enough to prove that this guy can be a difference maker for them. We saw it last year, and credit to Jerry Jones. Listen, Nick, people gave crap to Jerry Jones about this because you remember when Amari Cooper, a couple weeks before he left the Raiders, he wasn't doing diddly squat,
right?
And they go out and trade a first-round pick for the guy. I think it was just a first-round pick, might have been a little bit more, but a first-round pick for the guy. And he comes out and he's a world beater. And so this defense is going to be the question mark. I love their running back. I think this kid Jones, Byron Jones, he's one of the best cornerbacks in the league for the system that they run, and they do a good job of getting the pressure up front. And with Lawrence and Charlton, they should be able to maintain that. I think Vander Esch is going to be one of the breakout candidates for linebackers because you have to remember this kid Vander Esch didn't start getting serious starting time until like mid-season.
Right.
So when you talk about getting a healthy Sean Lee and keeping Vander Esch on the field, and we also talked about the way that they handled the things with Randy Gregory and then obviously Taco Charlton. So they're going to have some guys in the front seven. We'll see what their schedule looks like. But to me, man, this is a team that not only can win the division, but I think they have a chance to win the NFC if they can bring everybody back into play.
Speaking of the schedule, let's take a look at it. So they start off against the Giants. That's at home, at Washington, home against Miami, at New Orleans, home against Green Bay, at the Jets, and then home against Philadelphia. They get the bye week 8. And then when they come back, it's a Monday night game against the Giants, home against Minnesota, and then they have back-to-back away games against Detroit and New England. Then the Thursday, this looks like this is the Thanksgiving game. That game will be against Buffalo. Then they're at the Bears, home against the Rams, at Philly, and then they finish off their season in Washington. Based on this schedule and based on what we just looked at for the depth chart, man, okay, I'm thinking with Zeke, I think they could really challenge Philadelphia for the East. Yeah. I'm thinking with Zeke, they're a 10 to 12 win team. I think without him, I think without him, I still think Dak's going to have a big year with all the weapons around him. So I would almost say like 9 to 11. So I'm thinking there's a flux between 9 to 12 wins. But based on what we're assuming that Ezekiel comes back, 11-5 for Dallas to me is not impossible for them to get.
Yeah. I would say I would go a little bit more crazy about this, but just listening to that schedule, Nick, that schedule gets pretty difficult after week 8. I know that they have a couple of games against the Giants and a couple of games against the Redskins, two teams that we just talked about probably won't be very good.
Right.
But, you mentioned the Patriots. You mentioned they're going to play the North this year, so they'll play the Bears, and I think the North is going to be a really competitive division this year. So they've got a pretty tough schedule, but to me, man, a tough schedule to me is a good test. Is your team for real? Or, we don't want to just go out there and have a walkthrough here for 16 games before the playoffs. So I see this team with Zeke, quite frankly. I think this is a 10 to 12 win team guaranteed with Zeke. I think they'll find a way to eke out some wins that they probably shouldn't win. That's the real key to me is, can this defense stay on top of everything, because this offense is going to score a lot of points. Can they, get to the passer the way that they want to? Honestly, I counted 5 pretty easy wins on that schedule, and I'm venturing to say that they can get another 5 to 6. Out of their talent alone. So yeah, I think 10 wins is pretty good. And quite frankly, man, a lot of people are all in on the Eagles. I've already talked to you about how I feel about Doug Peterson. I'm not huge on the guy. I think they've got the talent level, but I don't think they're far and away better than Dallas, and I can envision Dallas winning this division.
Let's go to Philadelphia.
Let's do it.
And let me pull up this depth chart. So here we go. So I'm with you. I probably should have went with Philadelphia second because I didn't think about it, but.
No, but to go off of that, I think a lot of people are high on Philly this year. I think, quite frankly, we'll talk about their depth chart. They do have a pretty nice depth chart of guys on offense. I mean, you'll see it, but Dallas Goedert is going to be a breakout candidate for them to go along with Zach Ertz. They've already got Alshon Jeffrey. They brought in Deshaun Jackson. They've already got Nelson Aguilar. They brought in Jordan Howard. They drafted this kid Miles Sanders. They've got a really nice depth chart, so a lot of people are high on them, but I just don't see it.
You pretty much just knocked out the starters right there, and then going to the offensive line, Jason Peters, Isaac Semalo, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, and then Lane Johnson. Wait a minute, but is Lane Johnson? Is he hurt or suspended?
He's suspended, I believe.
That's what I thought too. So Lane Johnson's going to miss some games as well. And then they're running a 4-3. So Brandon Graham, you got Malik Jackson and Fletcher Cox in the middle. Derek Barnett, Vinny Curry comes back to Philadelphia. They also got Josh Sweat. That's the kid that they drafted from Florida State. Kamu, Grigor Hill, Zach Brown, and Nigel Bradham is the linebacking crew, and then Rodney McLeod and Malcolm Jenkins are your safeties, and Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills rounds out the secondary. And then, going into the schedule, so they're home against the Redskins to start off, then at Atlanta, home against Detroit, at Green Bay, home against the Jets, and then 3 consecutive road games against the Vikings, Cowboys, and Bills in that order. And then they're home against the Bears to get the bye week in Week 10, and then finishing off their schedule, they're back-to-back home games against New England and Seattle, at Miami, home against the Giants. That's a Monday night. At Washington, home against Dallas, and at the Giants. Here's the thing about Philly. It all starts and ends on the health of Carson Wentz, because you don't have that security blanket anymore. Nick Foles is in Jacksonville now. So your backup quarterback now is Nate Sudfeld. So if Carson Wentz goes down, I feel like this offense goes down. But there's still some, like you said, you brought in Jordan Howard, you drafted Miles Sanders, you have Alshon, you bring back Deshaun. Nelson Aguilar, he's been up and down as a receiver. There's days where he looks amazing, and there's days where you don't even know how he has a roster spot. And Zach Ertz is one of the better young tight ends in the game. So the offensive pieces are there. Maybe I'm over or underrating it, but I was not wooed by any of the linebackers in this 4-3 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, these guys popped up, and I'm just like, I just had that man in my head. I'm not wooed by them. So based on that and based on the schedule, boy, this schedule is tough too, because I forget the East plays the North.
That's what I was going to say. And another thing, Nick, people are forgetting, this team last year wasn't very good. I mean, they really salvaged their way the last 5 games to get into the playoff, but the defense was atrocious. They were giving up points to bad teams, and they weren't able to play guys the way that they wanted to play them, and they just didn't have the separation on defense that they needed. And it took a double doink from Parkey to even get them, past round 1.
Right.
So, they had no business winning that game against the Bears. The Bears just really flubbed that one. So, that based on their record too, man, or their schedule, that's a tougher schedule, man. When you're taking into consideration that, the road games that you have to go through, 3 straight road games against no matter who, is a tough assignment. I would venture to say this. I think if Carson Wentz goes down, this team is in big, big trouble.
Yeah.
Because Nate Sudfeld is not going to do it for you. And I hate to do a plug for my man Colin Kaepernick here, but they might have to take a look and see what other options they've got out there right now for a backup quarterback, because right now Nate Sudfeld isn't going to do it. I know he's been in their system for a little while, and that's big in the NFL. Well, this guy, he's been in our QB room for 3 years, so he knows the offense. Yeah, that's fine, but can he play quarterback?
Right.
So so we'll see about that. I don't want to go into hypotheticals, but if we're talking about a team that's 100% healthy, I could definitely see 10 wins in the future here. But Carson Wentz, there's no excuses this year. He's got to go out there, play 16 games, and he's got to show the types of flashes he showed before last year in order for this team to go, because I don't think the defense is going to win them any games.
And let me say this. I think the defining moment for their season is between weeks 3 and 8, because in weeks 3 and 8, of the 1, 2, 3, 4, of those 6 games right there, 4 of those 6 games are on the road, and those road games consist of Green Bay, who's, as much as I think they're going to kind of take a huge falling off this year, they're still tough at home. So you're going to be at Green Bay, at Minnesota, at Dallas, and the at Green Bay game is actually a Thursday night game, but at Minnesota, at Dallas, and at an improved Buffalo. I'm telling you what, if Philadelphia in the first 9 games of the season comes out 5-4, it will be a miracle from God, because that stretch right there, because looking at that between week 3 and 9, so you're home against Detroit, at Green Bay, home against the Jets, at Minnesota, at Dallas, at Buffalo, and home against the Bears. And we all know how good the Bears are defensively, so they can throw the Eagles fits. If they, like I said, if they come out 5-4, I think it's a miracle from God, but I don't see it happening. So I think I'm going to actually change my stance. I will give the East to Dallas, and I will put Philadelphia at 9-7. The talent is there. I'm still a little scared on the health of Carson Wentz. I'm with you. Carson Wentz can get hurt, and you're like, okay, well, we got Nick Foles that we know can perform. Like you said, you got Nate Sudfeld there, and you have no idea what you're getting out from Nate Sudfeld. Like you said, oh, well, yeah, he's done study the room, but can you play quarterback, though? I mean, anyone can study.
Sure.
Who was the back study for Peyton Manning? Yeah, he backed up Peyton Manning for God knows how long in Indianapolis. Couldn't play quarterback for squat. You know what I'm saying? So
Blondie, the long blonde-haired dude.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying? So I'm with you on that. That if Carson Wentz, who's don't get me wrong, is a really good quarterback, But man, the health is such an issue, and it could come into play. And based on that schedule and kind of the same schedule, the way that Dallas had theirs, I'm just saying that when I'm looking at Philadelphia's offense and I'm looking at Dallas's offense, it's just that if Ezekiel Elliott is on Dallas's offense, I'm telling you what, that offense is going to be so good to look at. With the offensive line, and you're bringing back Witten, and you bring in a number one option from Randall Cobb, and Michael Gallup now is going to get some starting play now that Cole Beasley's out, and Amari Cooper, now that he got out of Oakland, was so good, and now Dak's kind of in a contract year. You know how that goes. So the stars, I feel like, could really align for Dallas. And all the Dallas Cowboys suck balls, memes, and everything, and how much they suck, that could come to an end this year if all the stars align into place.
Yeah, and I will say this, Nick. This team, this Philadelphia team, has to win 5 out of 6 games in their division to really get themselves out of that hole in that first 8 games like we talked about. You're going to have to sweep the Giants. You're going to have to sweep the Redskins, which is tough. I mean, you know how it is with division games. No matter how bad you are, you play the team twice a year and you're ready for them. You know them well, and it's always a tough game. And there's no guaranteed wins in the division. So you got 4 games against the Redskins and the Giants that you're gonna have to sweep. And then on top of that, you got 2 tough games against Dallas. And to me, head to head, I like Dallas in each one of those. I think Dallas is going to just run the ball and take advantage of those linebackers that we talked about aren't really all that great. I mean, Nigel Bradham has made a name for himself over there, but quite frankly, they lost Jordan Hicks. I know that they had a couple of guys that they lost via free agency. It's going to be a tough assignment for this team to be able to maintain the sort of game that they need in order for their defense to win them the game. So I just don't see that happening. I think we talked about it even when we were talking about Dallas. I just think right now Dallas has a lot of things going for them, and I think Philadelphia has to really come out there and prove that they can win games with a makeshift sort of defense. And this offense is going to be really good. I mean, I love Zach Ertz. I love Dallas Goedert as tight ends. I think they're going to be really good, safety blankets. But this running game is still up in the air. We don't know what Miles Sanders is going to look like. We don't know what Jordan Howard's going to look like. People forget they still have Jamal Adams and some of the other guys that they had here last year. So we'll see, man. I quite frankly think 10-6 is probably where they're going to be at. I think they may be able to be a wild card. But, man, they have some tough stretches in that schedule. And if they don't take care of business in the division, we could be looking at a team that's missing the playoffs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Real quick before you go, before we go, actually, because we're definitely over 2 hours, I made a mention on my Facebook about Madden 20. I haven't, I mean, outside of everyone saying it's the fumble issue, the fumble issue has been the big issue. But outside of it, I have not heard any, how between Madden 16 and Madden 19, everyone kept saying it's the same game. Yeah. They really didn't do anything. But Madden 20, I've heard nothing but positives. I know you got it. I'm going to try and get it soon, but tell me about Madden 20, how good it is.
Man, I got it on the PS4. I just recently got the PS4 to try and play MLB The Show because I've just been dying to play MLB games. So I just bought the PS4 recently, a couple months ago, and I bought the Madden last weekend. And yeah, dude, you hit it on the head because Madden, and I'll say this about a lot of sports games, Nick. I feel like a lot of sports games, they just take the same game and they add 1 or 2 different things here or there, and they just call it, the different year. And then basically it's just updated rosters, right? That's always a running joke. Like, yeah, we're basically paying $59 every year for updated rosters.
Right.
This year was so much different. The gameplay to me is similar, but I think better. I have heard some things about people talking about the fumble issue. I know that online is a big issue, but I'm not huge to play online. I'm more of a franchise guy, Nick. I don't know about you. I play online. I play online occasionally when I feel like it. I'm more of a franchise guy. And they've added so much to the franchise features. They've also tweaked the way that you can run, plays. The playbooks are overall better. You can run RPO passes in this now, so they've incorporated some RPO stuff. I was really impressed. And one thing I was really impressed with, Nick, is this new QB1 mode. Basically puts you as a quarterback, out of high school, highly recruited. You're promised the starting gig to start off, and then basically the top recruit in the country decommits to where he was going to go, and he comes to your school, and you end up sitting for 4 years. And it basically simulates to the national championship playoff. And basically that quarterback is injured, and you're stepping in for your first college game as a, in the college football playoffs. So you get to pick your college team. I believe there's 10 different teams, like Florida State in there, Florida, Texas Tech, Texas, USC, Clemson, and you get to basically choose your college and then essentially play 2 playoff games and then play in the combine to up your value. And from what I understand, there's probably like 3 or 4 teams that are possible to draft you. I think the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, the Giants, and a couple of other teams. I really like the mode. I think it's really interesting. It's a cool little addition. But overall, man, they changed a lot of aspects of the game that have made it worth it this year. I think what they've done with the plays, they've made the plays a little bit more realistic, a little bit more interactive. I think, it's not just running the same dive play 8 times in a row anymore. You've got RPO, you've got these different formations. So I was really impressed with the game. I overall think that the game is right now a vast improvement over the last year. But I wish like FIFA or some of these other sports games would take a hint that Madden did and basically say, let's just stop. Even like formatting, Nick, it just bothers me when the game looks the same. Like if the menu screen is the same as it was last year, that's just a sign of laziness.
True.
Like you guys were so lazy that you just made the same menu screen. Like at least give us a new menu screen, So this game is so much vastly different than the last games that I give EA Sports credit. The tackling is a little bit more realistic now. There is still a little bit of an issue with running back breaking tackles on you. I have noticed that. There's always going to be a few glitches, and you know how it is, Nick. They tend to improve the gameplay as the time goes along. So I think in another 3 or 4 weeks, we will start to see the type of patches to the bugs that we need. But overall, I think it's worth the money for sure. And especially, I have it on PS4. I love it. I think I'm sure you'll get it soon, and definitely get on PS4 so we can play.
All right. That seems to be the consensus, is that I need to get it on the PS4. So I'll probably end up doing it.
I haven't heard the differences, but I got it on PS4. I just want to be selfish so we can play or something.
All right, cool. I'm getting some feedback in the chat rooms. Keith Youngbuck Robbins Jr. says that fumbles are an issue, but that's something that I feel like that once about week 4, once you fix out all the glitches and everything, I feel like that's something that'll improve, that'll be better. So, and he said he's on an online league, and he said it's great. The chef Paul Doobie, he says that he plays, I guess, both online and franchise mode. But what was intriguing to me of what you said was the college football playoff and the fact that some teams have allowed EA Sports to use their school in their game. And I was a huge advocate of NCAA 13 and 14. I was on many online leagues with that. Played many years, won a few national championships. Matter of fact, the most recent one that they had put out, my buddies and I was like, we should be more competitive. Let's pick a school that's not even B-, like C+ and below, and then let's try and earn jobs. So I took the job in New Mexico, And
Ooh.
yeah, it
Lobos.
was harder than you think, because then I had to play
Yeah.
the formidable Boise State, and I couldn't beat them for the longest, and I finally did.
Yeah.
And then the year that I beat who did I just say? Boise State, and I went to some really nice bowl game. When it came to trying to get a job, I was offered the head coaching job at Florida State, and ain't no way in hell that I was going to say no to that. So
Yeah, you can't say no to that.
exactly. So I mean, I had so much fun with it, and I understand, the college players getting paid, and NCAA and EA using their likeness, and it's all this nonsense. If that's not a good sign of what things to come, maybe in 2020, there's gotta be an NCAA football coming out, because like, I love Madden, but I remember the times where you could go through the Heisman mode
Yeah.
in NCAA, and then transfer him over into Madden.
Yeah.
And that kind of died in like 2013, 2014. They kind of killed that off, and I miss that kind of thing, And I mean, it's the same with NCAA. When the college basketball games came out, those games were so much fun. But because there's so much money involved, like, I'm just confused for EA Sports, that makes a lot of money, and the NCAA, that's a cash cow as far as I'm concerned. You're going to tell me that you guys can't come up with $20 million to pay these guys? So you're going to give these guys $20 million. You're going to make almost $80 million in the game. What's the freaking issue? Let's figure this out.
I'm honestly pissed. That pisses me off to no end, Nick, because there's something special about NCAA games, and I know you could relate to this. There's something special about the recruiting process.
Yes.
And building a team from a nobody and just a 1 or 2 star team to a 5-star team that gets hot recruits and 5-star recruits, and there's something really fun about that, and it's a shame that it's a money thing. And the fact of the matter is, I think you hit it on the head. It's a step in the right direction that we get to see this select group. I think it's like 10 teams that are going to be able to be in this in the Madden game, and hopefully it means that we can get an NCAA game soon, because I really, really love the feel of it's cool doing a franchise in Madden. It gives you a good sense of fulfillment, but there's nothing like the fulfillment of taking Air Force, or I did it with NIU, or taking a small school, or even to a certain extent, like going to an SEC type division and taking like a Missouri, or just like a
Vanderbilt,
being the little
or something
fish
like
in the big pond, and trying to. So it's a special thing, and I love the recruiting. The whole recruiting thing when it came to the NCAA football game was so fun, and I hope that this means that it's back, because let's hope in the next 5 years we could get this resolution to this NCAA thing, because the NCAA is holding us hostage with just basically the way that the video games are, and then now there's this big beef with like March Madness this year is going to be it's going to be heavily scrutinized, because this organization is making billions of dollars while these players go out there and basically don't make anything. And before anybody wants to jump in and say, well, they're getting a free education. Yeah, that's fine and dandy. We get it. Free education is good. But if you are making money off of these players and this organization as a whole, and these guys aren't getting a piece of the pie, it's not fair. No matter what
it's not.
I don't care how big your scholarship is. I don't care how much you had to pay to be able to go to school. If you're making billions of dollars off me, I deserve a cut of that.
Yep. I could not agree more. And Keith was saying, he said he played for Oregon and got drafted by the Dolphins. Aaron Lopez is saying that the QB1 play is really good. You can play that mode all day. Best Madden in the last few years. That's all I need to know, because I'm not going to front. Of all the EA games that do come out, my personal favorite will always be NHL. I freaking love NHL. I'm still playing NHL as we speak. If I'm not mistaken, I wonder if EA Sports will ever put their hand back in the baseball mode, because technically, the baseball license was owned by Take-Two. Take-Two no longer, which is 2K Sports, they no longer exist.
Huh.
So,
I bought this PS4 for nothing, is what you're telling me.
well, not necessarily because the show, the show is without question. Okay, this how it is. Remember when 2K brought out 2K5? 2K5, NFL 2K5, first of all, was only $20, which was the biggest eye opener. And then people were talking about how that game was actually better than Madden. So what did Madden do? They went and bought the NFL license to where no other companies could make NFL games. Fair enough. So then remember when EA Sports ditched it was triple play, and then they revamped it to MVP baseball. People were saying that MVP baseball that had Randy Johnson when he was still with the Diamondbacks on it was actually almost as good, if not better than the game than the show. So then Take-Two,
the show at the time.
Right. So then Take-Two comes out and says, well, we're going to buy the baseball license. And now you can't, I'm popping in the mic, you now can't make baseball games. But somehow Sony Entertainment found a loophole where they could still make the show while was coming out with Major League Baseball 2K whatever. And the show has been so great that 2K doesn't even make games. So if 2K doesn't have the license, who has the baseball license? That's why I'm saying if EA Sports really wanted to really rise up, because remember the year after they couldn't make MVP, they tried to make a college baseball game, which actually wasn't bad, but people are not really that familiar with the College World Series as they are with the football playoff, with March Madness. So there's really no market out there for it, for where people are going to be like, oh, this seems real interesting. No, you're just going to buy a game because it's EA Sports. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So if there's no baseball license, I would kind of like to see EA Sports dip their feet in the water to see maybe if they can come back with an MVP.
Yeah.
But I think the show is so far ahead that I don't think they'll do it. Because in fairness, there has been no other hockey game other than NHL. The 2K tried to keep up with them. They could never succeed. And then there's no other football game. Well, there can't be because EA Sports still has a license. So I'm with you in the sense of being about the recruiting process. It's something about going after a guy since the beginning of the year and watching your team not even be considered to all of a sudden creep up to be that number 2 team. And then you throw in a little bit more extra time, and then you visit his house, and then you invite him to a game, and you make sure he comes to the rivalry game. Like if I'm Florida State, I'm bringing him to the Miami game and watch us beat the absolute dog shit out of Miami. And then all of a sudden you love what you see, and the crowd is going crazy and all this. And now that 5-star quarterback, that 5-star balanced quarterback that can run and throw, now all of a sudden went from not even considering your school to now wanting to come to Florida State.
Your favorite.
I am with you 100%. It's something about that that's better than just giving a guy an $80 million contract and hope he can just live up to it. I could not agree with you more on that.
That's what bothers me about Madden at some point is like, after one season with Madden, it's basically just like, okay, now I'm going to go buy people. And, there's not really a sense of like this drafting and everything. And I do want to say quickly before I know we're about to wrap up, I like the show. Don't get me wrong, but I think the show is a perfect example of a series that has no competition and basically just kind of got lazy and just said, we're going to make this thing look the same. I think formatting-wise, this looks exactly the same from the last the show that I played, I think was like maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So again, there's this sense of like, well, everybody loves us, and we've got the updated rosters, and I think they maybe added one mode, which is a new mode that basically is just like a road to the series, where basically it's just a shortened way to go to a 162 game season. So to me, they kind of would just said, you know what, everybody, we're the only show in town. What are they going to do? Go back to the old game? So, let's hope NCAA makes a comeback soon, though.
Please. I cannot, and you don't, I mean, as much as I would love for them to come back with college basketball, you don't even have to. Just come back with college football. Because I remember the last college basketball I played was college hoops, like 2K9 maybe or something like that. Even that game, it's the same thing. You get that 5-star recruit who wasn't even considering your school, but I bet you if you go out there and you win a few games, hey, shoot, I'd be more than happy to come to your school. And I mean, it's just so much fun. The recruiting process is just so much fun, especially like when the season starts and you start hitting those big states, Texas, Florida, kind of Oklahoma. Maybe there's a few in Illinois, California, because your big three is California, Texas, and Florida. That's always been your big three. So then you get those guys, but then maybe there's a star recruit in New York, or maybe there's a star recruit in, like I said, Illinois, or maybe there's a star recruit in Wyoming, and he's trying to, you never know how
a pipeline state. Like if you're the University of Iowa, you're picking up pipeline states. You're going to the, southern states, and you're trying to pick up some stuff from Illinois. So I love that aspect of it. It was such a realistic recruiting aspect. I loved it.
Yes. So I'm with you 100%. It's time to bring it back. It's time to stop playing games. It's time for the NCAA to freaking stop monopolizing these guys. I mean, hell, you're making billions of dollars just based on the advertisements, especially in the basketball games. Like you watch a March Madness game, okay, there's the tip-off. And then you go 4 minutes into the game, there's a TV timeout. And then you go 8 minutes in the game, there's a regular timeout. Then a minute and a half after that, they got to take another TV timeout. You just made almost millions of dollars based on advertisement for that. So what are you doing, or what are you actually trying to fight against paying these guys just a small piece of the pie so that, a bunch of people can play, again? Come on, man. Like, it's just being greedy.
538 is a numbers-based art journalist group, and they crunched the numbers and basically said, even if we gave every athlete in the NCAA $10,000 a year and every, just basically giving out money, it would still not even break 1% of the profit share of just March Madness alone. So it's like, the fact of the matter is, if the conversation is anything but greed on the part of the NCAA, then we're having the wrong conversation, because this is not like a logistical thing where it's like, well, where are we going to get the money, or how are we? No, it's not about that. The fact of the matter is that NCAA conglomerate does not want to give up the money, and they're not going to lose money by giving it to the players. So it's a power play.
Yeah, that's all it is. That's all it is. And I mean, don't get me wrong, bro. The biggest hustle in all the sports is the NCAA. The NCAA is the biggest hustle I've ever seen in my life. Ever. Yep. Millions of dollars. You almost as much have sponsors on bowl games. Like ones we may not have even heard of. Like, I mean, AT&T has always done the what are they? I think they're the Cotton Bowl, and then Tostitos used to do the Tostitos. You know what I'm saying? All these guys, freaking Dr. Pepper with the Sugar Bowl. You got all these big name markets, and then every year you look up, there's always that one .com that pops up on the lesser of the bowls. But it's still money. You know what I'm saying?
GoDaddy.
The GoDaddy.com bowl between New Mexico and Hawaii. People are still watching, and you still just got money off of them. So what's the flipping issue?
If you just took 5% of your profits, not even 10, not 50, just 5% of your profits from every single one of those sponsors, you could easily pay these guys just enough so that they're happy, because nobody's asking for these guys to make hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. We want these kids to be able to go to school comfortably and be able to have a meal and be able to say, you know what, my team made it to the Final Four, and we're part of the reason why you guys are making so much money, so we deserve a cut of that. And that's, I think that at the end of the day, this isn't a conversation of oh, well, should we play the players? No, we 100% should. That's the reason why you give out scholarships, right? Because you're acknowledging that these players deserve something. So to me, man, it's crazy. It's just the country hasn't waken up to how corrupt the NCAA is.
No, they haven't at all.
All it's going to take is one or two more of those scandals, Nick, and the can of worms is gonna bust wide open.
And let me say this: if the NCAA would have been halfway smart, they would have said to themselves, well, wait a minute. Maybe, just maybe, if we gave these guys, let's say each player on, I don't care, let me just know, Tennessee. Let's say each player on the Tennessee football team gets $10,000 just right now to kind of play, right? For the season, right?
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, not even football. I'm going to go to basketball, because football, you can't even get out after 3 years in basketball.
Right.
You going to tell me a bunch of kids that have formed a bond beyond belief in school wouldn't come back the next year knowing that they're still going to get a little chump change? Because if you think about it, a lot of these guys are jumping because they're going from nothing straight to millions, because they have absolutely no financial reason to stay in the NCAA. I don't know what would go through the mind of a Zion and a Cam Reddish and a RJ Barrett, but you're going to tell me that if they didn't even at least get a little bit of bread to where they would be like, you know what? Yeah, I know I'm going to make millions of dollars, but man, I love it here at Duke, and I'm still getting money to survive. Okay, I'll stay another year. Then you're going to get your Tim Duncans of the world. Then you're going to get your, who else stayed? I think Steph Curry stayed in Davidson for 2 years. Yep. And then you're going to get your...
Klay Thompson stayed,
Klay Thompson's going to stay. I think, what's his name? Who would have went to Weber State? The one in Portland. Dame Lillard, I think, was a 2 or 3 year starter.
Yeah.
These guys now will stay, and now you're going to get a real nice product. Because think about it. Think about some of the teams that UConn had. Ben Gordon stayed. Emeka Okafor was a 4-year senior. These guys are staying. If you get Rudy Gay, I think Rudy Gay came out as a freshman, and they kept telling him and they kept telling him he needed to stay, but he didn't listen. But could you imagine if Rudy Gay was like, okay, I'm getting $20,000, you know, at least for me to kind of be comfortable. My education's paid for. Now I gets to eat. Now I get a little spending money. I got a bond with my brothers here at UConn. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stay and try and win another championship. Come on, man, this is not that hard.
Let me give you a perfect example.
All right.
Bo Bull. If he was making at least a little change in his pocket, he would have stayed at Oregon this year.
Facts.
He would have developed his game, and he would have came in next year as a top 15 pick.
Yep. Without question. But think about it. You got Bol coming from Sudan. Definitely not the richest country in the world. And he trying to
think his dad, just because his dad was a player, that he's a millionaire. Let me break it to you guys. Manute Bol played in the 80s, guys. He wasn't making that much money.
No.
But the fact of the matter is, Nick, you hit it on the head earlier when you said that a lot of these players come from really, really rough financial backgrounds. And part of the reason why they're coming out so early and jeopardizing their value and their career is because they have no choice.
Right.
That they have, I mean, we see every single year 10 to 15 NFL football players or draft guys who come out and basically said, listen, I couldn't afford to go to school next year. Like, I could have basically built my value if I went back to school, but I can't afford it. My family needs this type of money. So even if it's just, getting in as a 7th-round pick, it's still better than me going back to Alabama next year. And, you know how it is. Oh, you're like, LSU just made their locker room like a $100 million locker room with LCD screens out of the thing, and you got a bed with a pull out bed at your locker room. It's like, dude, you know what? How about instead of that, you pay me?
Yeah.
How about instead of making the whole locker room purple and making it look fancy, you give me what I deserve out of this, and I don't have to feel, I will come back and play 4 years with you instead of dipping after 2.5 years.
Right. Exactly. And here's another thing I don't understand. Why are you putting $100 million in the locker room for a bunch of kids that's probably not going to hang out in there anyway? Like, don't you think
they only spend like 5? They spend like 5 hours there total a week.
Right. So you go in, you change, you go out on the field, you practice, or you go out on the field, you play, you come back, you shower. You're like, damn, man, I'm tired. I'm trying to go back to the room.
I want to go back to my dorm room and sleep because I got to eat this can of beans because I'm not getting paid.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying, man. The NCAA is the biggest hustle, and you said something right 100%. The country is not woke to what's going on. And I think once they wake up to what's going on, because my cousin brought this to my attention when this whole thing was kind of at the heart of, at the core of this. He was like, man, how are these student athletes getting by? They go to school. Okay, let's look at what maybe a student athlete goes through in a day. You wake up in the morning, you got to go to class. Then you got to study. Then you got practice. Then you go back home to study. At what point are you getting a job so you can get a $200, $300, $400 in your pocket so you can go eat at a Taco Bell or a McDonald's or Jack in the Box, wherever school you're coming from. So how are these guys getting through? Because the scholarship only does so much.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man, pay these people.
And Nick, I watched this Outside the Lines where they like there's some old rich curmudgeon-y dude from the NCAA like trying to defend them as if like, well, we're not doing anything bad, we're giving these kids a free education. And then like they're like, well, yeah, but sir, these guys are investing 50 hours of their week at some point dedicated to football. That's not including their class time. That's not including the time that they have to put in for studying and homework and projects. And on top of that, when are they eating? And he comes back and says, well, most all of our scholarships get 2 meals a day. And it's like, you're saying that basically these guys have to go by this ticketed system where they have to go downstairs. Like, first of all, do you want to eat cafeteria food twice a day? Is that really your only option? And to a certain extent, Nick, we're talking about Alabama, LSU. We're not talking about NIU. We're not talking about some of these guys who go to these schools that don't have as much money as these schools or some of these ACC schools. So it's crazy to make this assumption that well, you're getting a free scholarship, so everything is square. No way. Because at the end of the day, these guys are making you the top the top percent of these guys in the NCAA millions and millions of dollars to their pocket, not even to the NCAA, to their pocket. And you're saying that you can't give them some of that? That's crazy. I liken this, Nick, to remember. I think it was close to 4 years ago, when people found out that the NFL was a not-for-profit, and everybody freaked out. They were like, what? They're a non-profit or whatever? And when everybody started freaking out, that's when the NFL came out and said, no, we now pay taxes and da-da-da-da-da. But it's going to take that for the NCAA to change what they do, because until people start to smarten up as to how these student athletes are being treated. I mean, we're not even talking about the thousands of student athletes, Nick, every year who get hurt and never, ever have a shot to play again.
Right.
And it's a sad thing to see that basically everybody walks in with this dream that only 1% of them can actually achieve, and they have nothing to show for it when it's all said and done.
Yep. But I'm praying that something to come along. And these between the multi-billion-dollar EA Sports and the multi-billion-dollar NCAA, because this isn't even up for debate. I know that if my black ass was CEO of EA Sports, I'd have been fighting with the NCAA. Like, look, man, do I need to put in a little extra on this check? Because even I like playing NCAA, as much as I like playing Madden, and I'm trying to develop a game. So if I needs to put in just a little bit more bread to pay these guys so they would be cool, we could develop a game. I'm still going to rake in all these millions because the game's going to be... Bro, could you imagine how much money EA Sports would make if they announced that 2020 was coming out and NCAA was like, we have approved of this? The game...
The pre-orders alone on that.
Oh, my God. Dude, GameStop and wherever, Best Buy or wherever you can get video games would literally have to have security at their doors because the country would go flipping nuts. And they have to realize that just by coming out with a game in 2020 would it would fill their pockets to a point of no end because the whole country would rejoice.
Yeah, and you know what, Nick? Remember when they had student athletes like don the covers, and people will say, well, how did they do that? Well, that was because the EA Sports or whoever made the game would basically throw those guys a check because all the guys who made it to that cover had already graduated or moved on from the NCAA, and we should be asking them to do the same thing. Basically saying, you know what? If you want to put your starters likeness, meaning, let's say, for example, this year, would we have had every single player on Oklahoma's roster 100% accurate? No, but Kyler Murray would have been on there.
Easily.
Brown would have been on there.
Easily.
There's guys that would have been obvious, and there's guys that are replaceable. So it's there's a game that you can play with it. And it's flabbergasting to me that they still haven't figured it out because there's money to be made and there's a demand for that game.
Easily. Aaron said a little bit earlier that D-Wade played 3 years at Marquette. I think he did too.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was at Marquette. So that's what I'm saying, man. Like if Carmelo Anthony would have got money out of Syracuse after they won the national championship, I mean, maybe he would have stayed, maybe he doesn't, but it gives the NCAA at least some kind of blanket that, man, we don't know how to work with this one and done rule. Okay, put money in these people's pockets, and maybe they would love to stay with their brothers in school.
And maybe Nick, maybe in a couple of years when that one and done rule is basically done and guys can start coming out of high school, we might see the NCAA say, oh God, we better do something because, you have to think about it like this, Nick. There's a certain amount of Kevin Garnett and LeBron James and Kobe Bryant that can come straight out of high school.
Right.
But at the end of the day, a lot of these guys who feel the pressure to come out of high school are doing it for financial reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it with Brandon Jennings. We saw it with Emmanuel Mudiay. I think there was another guy this year who decided – there was a guy this year, Nick, who just said, fuck it, I'm going to go overseas. And he's
yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up because Al Harrington just bought a team in Australia and came out and said, forget the NCAA, come play with me in Australia and I'll pay you. And then when you're eligible for the NBA, then you can go into the NBA. Come on, man.
It's crazy. And people talking shit about LaMelo Ball and, LaMelo Ball is, he wants to be a player, but he doesn't want to be a part of the NCAA. Yeah, I can't blame him. Say what you want about LeVar Ball. He's a loudmouth. He's an idiot sometimes. He's crazy. But the guy is ahead of his time.
Yes.
He looked at the NCAA for what it was. It is a is a cash cow that basically is just a breeding ground for the NBA. And it's unfair to the players to basically say, well, we're going to have to subject you to 1 year of college and just so that you can basically make it into the league. No, that's crazy. You're going to tell me that I can't go to the NBA because I don't want to spend a year at UNC? That's crazy.
Yeah. And let me say this too. Of the 3 ball boys, the one that needed to benefit from going to college was LiAngelo. Because he's not as good. He's not as good. Well, he's definitely not on the same level as LaMelo. I think LaMelo Ball is going to be an absolute monster when he comes into the league. I cannot stress enough how good I think LaMelo Ball is. Here's the thing about Lonzo. When UCLA lost to Kentucky, right? And then the following game, Kentucky lost to, I forget who, and I think it was North Carolina, and it was in a very close game. You notice that when Lonzo lost to Kentucky, he immediately was like, I'm going to the NBA. You know what I'm saying? He could not have given a rat's monkey ass about being in UCLA. No. He just wanted to get out of there so he gets to the pros. Meanwhile, De'Aaron Fox, who just got done losing a close game to North Carolina, was just boo-hooing with his brothers in Kentucky because they had just lost such a close game. And that's the mentality. You got a kid that's with his brothers that has been fighting to get to the national championship to a guy who couldn't have gotten a rat's ass about being on, being on.
On the Bruins,
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that I think that it is very important that I think it's extremely important for, like you said, we're bringing awareness to what's going on in the NCAA. And I think if they can go out and somehow and in some way get money in these kids' pockets, I think it just makes for a better product because LaMelo's killing it in the Drew League. Every time you look up, this man's out there just dropping buckets left and right.
And he's out there in AAU and Drew League, and he's dominating everybody. And now he's finally got hops. Apparently, he's gotten taller, and his vert has gotten better. Dude, I will also say this, man. You have to say this to a certain extent too. We both know that there is paying players going on right now in NCAA.
Oh, easily.
We both. We're very aware that there are teams that can go out there and basically pay guys to come over there. I'm not going to accuse Calipari of anything, but I know Kentucky has been in deep trouble about that in the past. And it just so happens that Kentucky, they have had a couple of one-and-done guys, but there also have been a couple guys who stayed a couple years at Kentucky. And, to me, that might be enough of a reason for you to start to look at a pay system. Because, it might be a little bit, it might be something that, people will say is shady and something that you shouldn't do. And at the end of the day, it's not good, yada, yada, yada. But I think Calipari is a great example of a guy who probably, again, I don't know, this is all allegedly, and I'm putting words in his mouth, but he probably went up to these guys and said, listen, you can count on me here. And there's a lot of promises being made to some of these recruits. We're seeing it come to light. I think a couple of them were already given in Kansas. Who's the kid from Josh Jackson from the Suns? He's in big, deep trouble because Bill Self basically told him, basically you can come over here and I'll take care of all of your finances and we'll find a way to do it. And, at the end of the day, that's how you get good players.
Yeah.
So if we just legalize the damn thing and just make it easy for everyone, and so, just make it so that Kentucky is on equal playing field with, let's say, Vanderbilt.
Right.
I want to be able to have that sort of equal level playing field because Kentucky, they have a deal with Nike. They've got a bunch of promotion deals. Calipari's got a lifetime deal there. He's always setting up things with Nike and Adidas. So, yeah, dude, we just got to figure a way to pay these players. And I'm telling you that the quality of play is going to go up. Players are going to start to stay in school longer. And quite frankly, Nick, we're seeing, no exaggeration, 100 players every year coming out who might be good enough if they stayed for 2 years, but they just are not in a position to do that. So they would rather play, declare for the draft, play on the G League team for 2 years, ride the bench for 2 years, and just see what happens. So, we would be able to avoid that, and it would just add more value to the professional league too. The NBA has to be invested. The NFL has to be invested in fixing this NCAA problem.
Right. Hey, one last thing before we go. While we're on the subject of the NBA, I definitely wanted to bring this up because we talked about LeVar Ball earlier, but what were your thoughts on all the backlash that LeBron James took, supposedly being too involved in Bronny James's games recently, to a point to where Jason Whitlock, who I don't understand how this dumbass has a job on TV sometimes.
Seriously.
What?
Whitlock is a clown.
Yeah, I mean, a complete idiot. And for him to come out and actually clown a man who's a father to his firstborn son, who has his name, by the way. Let's forget that Bronny James is a LeBron James Jr.
LeBron Jr.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you're going to tell me that LeBron James can't come out to his son's games and act a fool for his son? Like, come on, man. Here's the thing. Now, I want to get your opinion, but I want to say this. My dad, I know that because I want to say Whitlock and I are the same age, but I'm pretty sure we're somewhere close. My dad, especially when I was a bowler, used to be one of my best coaches because he would always stay way in the back and he would always analyze everything that I would do. But I could never see my dad really be in the like a LeVar or like a LeBron, because that's not who the guy that he was, and that's fine. Not all dads are going to be like that. But LeBron James is in Bronny's life heavily. LeVar Ball is in his three sons' life heavily. For a society that we live in where black fathers being in black sons' lives is almost a rarity, and you have the audacity to go on national television and tell a black man that he can't be involved the way he was in his first son's basketball game? Dude, Jason, I don't like using the term Uncle Tom. I think it's a terrible. I'm glad that it's a word that I don't like to use. That's very Uncle Tomish for you to sit there and clown a black man. And I know that people are gonna be like, "Oh, Nick, you shouldn't use the race card." I will use the race card because I'm black. And to kind of get personal a little bit, my cousins on my dad's side did not necessarily have their fathers in their lives. So my dad played an integral role as the male role model in their lives as much as in mine. So don't sit there and tell me that I shouldn't use the race card, because I'm speaking from the side of the young black man. We go on TV all the time. We're seeing it. You can just pull up Maury for 2 hours and see all the stupid, dumbass nonsense that comes with young black men. We've seen what black men have done to not just black women in general, but how they talk to women nowadays. And you're going to tell me that some guy who, for as much as people may hate LeBron for a lot of stuff he does on the court, this man is in his kids' lives to the max and has done nothing wrong. And your dumbass got the audacity to sit there and clown this man for being in his kid's life. Jason Whitlock, F you and F everything you stand for. And I hope nobody else watches your stupid ass show, because you, my friend, are a complete piece of shit. And as much as I don't like cussing on this show, you now have forced me to cuss, because that's bullshit. You will not sit there and tell a black man that he cannot be involved in his black kid's life because you feel it's too much. F you. Who are you to tell LeBron James what he can and can't do? Because if Bronny doesn't have a problem with it, why should we have a problem with it? Dude, piss off.
Yeah. You know what, Nick? it's almost like black fathers can't win in this country.
I swear to God, dude. I swear.
It's nuts. I mean, if people aren't talking about issues within the black community and this and this and that, and black fathers aren't present, and just basically trivializing the way that black fathers are aren't in their kids' lives. And then, the other side of the spectrum is, well, but LeVar Ball is crazy, and no, he shouldn't be involved, to that extent. And, but first of all, anybody who's complaining about LeBron James things is a casual fan. If you've ever watched any AAU game ever, every parent is like that. I hate to break it to you guys, but AAU games are exactly the same. LeBron James is no different from any other father or mother on that in those stands, because that's why they're there. They're there to enjoy their kids being in the game, and at the end of the day, if you don't like it, then don't watch.
Exactly.
Don't be a part of it. But the fact of the matter is, Nick, black men can't win in this country, bro. If it's not one thing, it's another thing. If it's not, oh well, you guys, you can't say one thing about white supremacists shooting up people without somebody saying, well, black people killed each other all the time in downtown Chicago. You never seen anything about that. Well, you know what? We have seen plenty about that, and if you've been paying attention, people have been trying to change that. If you've been paying attention, there's been a lot of attention, and if you have been paying attention, if you know anything about that, you would know that a lot of that has to do with the poverty in the area and the gangs in the area and the type of lifestyle that is lived in that area, and the type of the fathers who are being stripped away from their families and not able to be a part of their family's life. So to see a guy like LeBron James, who is probably the number one, like, if you look at what this guy does off the court when it comes to his charitable funds and what he does for the city of Akron and the city of Cleveland and his My Wish School, which, basically is one of the greatest success stories of those types of schools ever, and all you see in the comments is, oh, well, how is he going to pay for it? Oh, LeBron just looking for, that guy can't win, Nick.
I swear.
I know.
I swear.
LeBron, we can hate him as a basketball player. I know we, probably both of us did for a long time because he was beaten up on our teams, but I've never, ever said one bad thing about LeBron James off the court.
Never.
And let's put it this way, Nick. You've never heard this guy get arrested.
Nope.
You've never heard this guy
cheating on his wife.
scandal.
None of that.
Never had any sort of issues. This guy is in his kids' lives. His kids love him. His kids look up to him. And just the type of rhetoric that this country is so used to spewing out. And Jason Whitlock, I hate to say this, Nick, but Jason Whitlock is just a guy who panders to his audience.
Yeah.
He knows that his audience is, largely right now a group of people who have been ostracized from other channels. I know people don't like, when people bring politics into sports, and, he's been one of those guys that's been a champion of that cause. Well, I'm not, and he loves to just talk shit about black people and sort of the way that this sort of dichotomy of who black people are. And it's like, I hate to break it to you, but black people are not a monolith. They're not all the same, just like white people or Asians or Arabs or anybody. It's not the same. Black people are no different. And the fact of the matter is, man, LeBron James will never be able to win. This guy's always going to have one thing or another. And I will say this to wrap it up. If you think what LeBron James did in those AAU games was inappropriate or bad or anything like that, you're an idiot. That's it.
Hands down.
That's end of
Hands
story.
down. That's it. Hands down. All right, bro. Well, we just went a solid 3 hours. I know, dude. And for some reason, I have chicken parm stuck in my head. And I'm really thinking about going to I might have to go to the store and go pick up some chicken parm. Go make it at the crib.
Man, go get an extra one for me.
Yeah, dude.
Please.
Yeah, dude. I'm ready to max. But thank you again to our sponsors, Nux 3-in-1 Refresher Spray, Intrinsic, Hodgepodge, Pod River. Also, what was I thinking? I will do a bear cave tomorrow. This is guaranteed. I was going to do one last Sunday, and I could not find the adapter to my headphones, so I gave up. I woke up the next morning, and it was sitting right in my face. And then I was like, I asked my mom, I was like, where did you find this? And she said it was in the laundry room. So I looked everywhere in the house but the one place that it shouldn't have been at. So I'm going to make sure that when I get home, this adapter piece goes into my soundboard so that tomorrow afternoon I can do a show. Because I have not done a bear cave in 2 weeks, and I feel like it is time for the people, for me to open up the bear cave before Oso Negro travels to New York. So,
yes, sir. Hey, Nick, thank you for holding it down for me this week, my man. I will hold it down for you next week, and I'm hoping we can hear from you while you're in NY.
Yes, sir. So, for Mack, I'm Oso Negro. Thank you, Steve. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.